I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And it sounds like we got a jet flying over. Yeah, we had our flyover. All right, we are on to item 2, approval of tonight's agenda. If there's any members of the public who wish to speak on this item, please use the raise hand feature. Not seeing any board, is there a motion?
I move to approve tonight's agenda.
I second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and with that, the motion passes. We are now on to item 3, comments from the board and superintendent. So we'll go down the line, Isabel, Bridget, and then myself.
Sure. Well, after last meeting, there is mostly regular Zoom meetings that we've done.
Can you put your mic closer to your?
Sure, and then there was a visit that we did to SMS, which was very interesting. We saw a lot of, like, as a continuation of what we were presented that evening, and I did talk a lot about my feedback with Michael, and I think we were able to talk with the principal and see the classrooms and look a little bit of what's going on in the school and the spirit and how everybody is feeling about this year at school. So, and I think we have been, there's not much to add for what we saw that Thursday. We just pretty much went and corroborated. So that's it.
Okay, so I sent in my packet comments, so they'll be in the minutes, but I did have a couple of things. I don't know, were either of you at the Santa Clara
Wednesday night?
Thursday? Yeah,
Last night.
Wednesday night, last night, whenever. No, you weren't, were you there? I didn't see you in the, no, okay. So there are a couple things, and then I have something from SCF as well. So the Sunnyvale Education Foundation did decide to move their $7,500 that they had for the, what were they gonna use it for? The TB testing that they normally do. And they reallocated that to go out to our TOSAs for class, like one-on-one student materials, working with students. And so that's gonna go out pretty soon. And then at SCCSBA last night, just in general, everybody was agreeing that the achievement gap is just much wider this year in general, and that the panelists that were speaking, even though they were from Los Altos, Saratoga area, so their demographics weren't as similar to our district, they were describing things that sound very familiar, and all the trustees really agreed with, which is just the lack of kind of social maturity that the students are having, and it's adding on, it's kind of compounding the behavior issues. So most trustees are finding that they're having to work with that this year. And then Marty from CSBA said that the AEC workshops will be out soon. He doesn't know why they're not published yet, but expect them on this next week. So you can pick what strands you want to go see and plan together. We can plan to go see some things together and with cabinet. And then the CSBA advocacy trip that's happening in the spring is going to be not a political action thing, so anyone can go. And they're going to get us more information about that from the lawyers about how all that will work. But in order to let more people in our county participate in that, we're going to move the date of the Hoffman Awards to May 4th. So that's a save the date thing. And I told Jesus and Mike about it. Or I told Mike about it, and I don't remember. Somehow I told.
Jesus knows.
Yeah, it was on. He was on the thread. So somehow, And so, oh, he did the checking. We don't have anything planned in our district that day. So it's a week later than they originally planned. And also we are looking for Hoffman applications. We'd have great chances if we apply because they have no entries up yet. So they're not mean to be funny about that, but everyone's really busy. Who's gonna fill out an award thing right now, even though everyone's doing tremendous work. So we're encouraged to apply. And then the last thing is that subcommittees for Ledge Action are coming up, and there's gonna be 2 for sure this spring. And so if you're interested, it'll be short term. They're looking for ways to build leadership within SCCSBA and also to help out with all the lobbying. And it's a great way to meet local elected officials on specific topics. So the 2 that we're gonna definitely need support for is special education and then the TK early childhood education. So if you're interested in those, you can let me know, or you can, chime in at the next time when we announce it. Okay, so that's all my announcements. Thanks.
Thanks. Like regular, webinars and meetings, as Isabel said, we went to SMS. And like, I've done the one visit before. It's just great to be on the campuses. I miss like volunteering in the classrooms, and it was fun. So I knew several kids from the classes, but we happened to go in the classroom where my daughter was. So I like came up right behind her, and she wasn't really mad I was there, but she wasn't necessarily super excited I was there. But it was fun to see the students and all the stuff that they're all their stuff they're doing. Looking forward to the AEC conference in a couple of weeks. And I think like most academies going too, right? So it will be a fun, educational, but also good for us to connect. And I just want to let you guys know, I should pull the email again. I got an email from the city. I think just like I'm on like a newsletter email, and I don't know if it's a special thing this month, but there was like a picture of a bunch of people holding these Sunnyvale Stands United Against Hate. And then on the website or on their email, so you could print these or pick them up. So I grabbed a handful. So anyone tonight, if you want it, these are all extras. So you're welcome to grab one if you want. And those who want, then you can go get them at City Hall or print them off from their website. And they also had a link to kind of essentially like how to be an upstander like as an adult. So I was excited I'm going to sign up for one of those. They're like free training, so I'm going to sign up for one of those. So I just thought that was kind of neat. And great to have the city doing that. And that's all my stuff. Dr. Gallagher.
Okay, so I'll start off with some COVID updates. And Mary Beth's here in case I say anything wrong. She'll just kind of wave and correct me. We were identified as all of our schools as second tier for school site vaccination sites. But there's a possibility that we're going to move up, and maybe one site would be able to have a school-based vaccination site as early as December 1st. We've had an initial meeting with them, and we'll see. The challenge is that the second date is 3 weeks later, which is right in the middle of the break. So we have to kind of sort that out. But I'll have more information about that. Also, there's a change from the county in symptomatic testing. So we can now use the rapid antigen test for symptomatic testing. And that's really good news because those results come in 15 minutes. And so in theory, like if a family was going through the drive-through here that we have, within 15 minutes, they'd have the result and they could go back to school instead of waiting another day to go back to school. So that's really good news. There's also a possibility that we'll be able to deploy some rapid antigen tests directly at the sites. So kids who are in school who are identified with symptoms could be tested on the spot. So that isn't quite firmed up yet, but that's all good news because that's positive, keeping kids in school positive. Also, Mary Beth, just speaking about her since she's here, she's working really hard with principals on protocols for after-school programs. And it looks like we're going to be in good shape to be able to offer that right after the beginning of the new year. So we're putting together those protocols. We've been getting, and by we, I mean Mary Beth, has been getting feedback from the schools and really putting together a really good chart that's clear and legible and understandable And then we'll begin communicating that to parents before the break, ideally, so that we can start all that. And then it takes a little bit of gearing up in that process because they have to get insurance for some of their programs and, find out who the kids are, all that kind of stuff. So that's good news. And then, and you probably all saw that the state budget picture is very positive. There's as much as a $31 billion surplus. I think it's really important for community-funded districts like ours to continue to advocate for funding for universal TK. I wrote an email to an assembly member today, and actually as part of my participation with the county superintendents, we're going to meet with some assembly members, and that was like the topic that is really important, I think, to us. Hopefully there'll be some one-time money. There's a lot of things that they need to do with that from our perspective as we learn more about that. And what I understand is that figure is usually the figure that ends up appearing in the governor's budget in January, his initial budget. So it's a good time for advocacy. And then the last thing is I'm really excited about AEC and finding out when what the different sessions are going to be. And I like the idea of us working together and doubling up. And we generally all sit together during the general session, as you know. I think we gain a lot more from that. So looking forward to that. So, thanks.
Can I ask you a clarifying question?
Yeah.
So on the after-school programs that you're talking about, these are enrichment programs, not tutoring, or like KLAS and those are going.
Yeah, those were already going.
And tutoring is already going in the sites that are offering
Yeah, these are like parent-led
it.
after-school activities.
Or PTA.
PTA-led.
Okay, and then my other clarifying question was, so the students that, they're cleared for COVID, they don't have COVID, but if they still have a fever, they should stay home, correct?
Right.
It's the same.
That's the same as before.
That's the same as before.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then as far as the letters go for the community-funded districts and TK, when Isabel and I went to the SF Squared thing, they said, follow up with us and we'll get you a toolkit so you can all write letters because we need you to help with that.
I will send you.
And I emailed her and she didn't email me back.
She just sent it out to me today, and I'm going to send this to you on Friday.
Okay. Yay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
And about volunteering, you say that Fairway is gonna start earlier than January, but they're gonna do like outdoors or outside?
They've already started,
Oh,
and
they've
it started
already
at Cumberland too. Yeah.
All right, thank you. We are now on to item 4, comments from the Sunnyvale Education Association. If there's an official representative online, sounds like there is. Welcome, Wendy.
All right, hello. It's so nice to see all of you. Well, I did see you a minute ago. You just disappeared. All I see is my icon. I just wanted to thank you all for the great start to our school year. We've been so busy, I haven't had a chance to talk to most of you. But it's been a great start for my members. The restorative restart for our students as much as a restorative restart for our teachers. We've been working hard, and I think I can speak for everyone to say we're super excited to be back working with students in person. I do want to thank Mary Beth and Jeremy for the continued work that they do with us and the open communication that we have with our district. It's been an amazing few years. I don't think I chose that word in the very beginning of the pandemic, but it's been amazing in building relationships. I also wanted to thank the district leadership as well as Bridget Watson for coming to our back to school kind of get together that we had. We ended up having it at Cherry Chase School, and it was outside, and it actually ended up being perfect, and really just enjoyed seeing each other and building back relationships that had been put on hold for a while we were out on the pandemic. So we're looking forward to working with the district as we start bargaining in January, and things are going great. Teachers are tired. Like I said, it's a restorative restart for students as much as it is for teachers, but I couldn't be more proud of my members and the dedication that they have shown this year to get our students back on track. So again, thank you, and I look forward to continuing this great journey.
Thank you, Wendy. We are now on to item 5, comments from the California School Employees Association. If there's an official representative, please use the raise hand feature. And not seeing any. We are now on to item 6, comments from the public. This portion of the agenda provides an opportunity for members of the public to directly address the governing board on any item of interest to the public. However, provisions of the Brown Act preclude any action being taken on any item not appearing on the posted agenda. Time limits allocated to public testimony are 3 minutes per person and 20 minutes for the public comments. Speakers are asked to give their name and affiliation so that an accurate record is reflected in the minutes. And as a reminder, per our board bylaw 9323, the board shall not prohibit public criticism of its policies, procedures, programs, services, acts, or omissions. During public comment, we encourage speakers to discuss issues with civility, to treat people whose opinions differ from their own with respect, and to focus on ideas, policies, and values. We have one in-person public comment for non-agendized items. And then I would say if there's anyone who wishes to speak on non-agendized items virtually, you can use your raise hand feature now, and then we will get to you after the in-person. So Eric, you can go ahead.
Okay.
Reminder, you have 3 minutes and the time should be up over there.
Greetings, my name is Eric Kroc from the Sunnyvale Partnership for Healthy Schools. I'm delighted that you're working on trying to get a vaccination opportunity put in place at one of the Sunnyvale schools. I'm fully supportive of that. I'm here tonight to ask that the Sunnyvale School District move as quickly as possible to make vaccination mandatory for in-person attendance. And one thing I'd like to point out is that this is not just for the safety of the students, it's also for the safety of the teachers. About 20% of Americans are immune suppressed to one degree or another. And there's no reason to think that our teachers and staff should be any different in that respect. People who are immune suppressed, whether because of transplantation or HIV or diabetes or immune conditions, may not develop a full effective immunity against COVID-19, even if they are fully vaccinated. And therefore, this is not just for the protection of the children, but it's also for the protection of the teachers and the staff as well, particularly those who may not be able to achieve full immune protection despite their best efforts. It's good to educate our parents about the importance of vaccination. It's good to make it as easy as possible. Vaccination is already free, available at pharmacies and county public health sites. But we all know that there is a hardcore of parents who have a anti-science, non-evidence-based, anti-vaxxer belief system, and they will not vaccinate themselves or their children until they are forced. Begging is not a strategy for dealing with people whose belief systems are not grounded in reality. The anti-vaxxer belief system is a cult-like mentality. It denies science, it denies evidence, it is resistant to the introduction of any scientific-based information that contradicts the conspiracy theories that fuel it. Speaking from experience, considerable experience on the internet, trying to reason with anti-vaxxers is a fool's errand. It's a waste of time. These people will not vaccinate themselves or their children until they are forced by a mandate. But what we have seen is that mandates do work. When you impose a mandate, the overwhelming majority of anti-vaxxers suddenly discover that it's simply too inconvenient for them to pull their children out of school, pay for a private education, or do homeschooling. And they get their children vaccinated, and everyone else is better off. So I asked the Sunnyvale School District make COVID-19 vaccination mandatory for in-person attendance at the earliest possible date, just like the 20 other vaccinations that are already mandatory. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, and then I will turn the time over to Aaliyah. How many raised hands? One raised hand? Okay, I'll turn it over to Aaliyah to help us with that.
Okay, we
Thank
have
you.
Mr. Connor Smith. If you want to go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hello. My name is Connor Smith. I am the Director of Business Development with Local 104, the Sheet Metal Union for Northern California. And I just want to take a minute of your time today to ask whether or not the Sunnyvale School District has applied for a grant under the Assembly Bill 841 for the CalVent program. The state has allocated $165 million for the updating and tab certification of school systems ventilation programs. The importance of indoor air quality cannot be overstated. It is important to health and well-being of both students and teachers. As we have seen during the COVID-19 pandemic, it can be a major part of a safe and healthy classroom. Ventilation means bringing fresh, filtered outdoor air into a room and removing indoor pollutants through a powered system, and cannot be achieved by simply opening windows and doors. A quality ventilation system removes indoor pollutants like chemicals and allows for the bringing of proper carbon dioxide particulates to healthy, acceptable levels. The deadline for application for AB 841 with the state is January 1st. And I would like to take this opportunity, if you have not already applied, to offer our assistance in helping your school system apply, because not only do our members, students, children attend your schools, but we do have an interest in making sure that you meet the skilled and qualified work requirements as per state law. And I would like to make myself available for any questions you may have.
Thank you, Connor. Because it's not on the agenda, we can't like really directly talk with you right now. But I think some people have made note about it.
And Aaliyah, if you can get his contact information, we can make contact with him just to get the details of that program. That'd be great. Thank you for sharing that, Connor.
Thank you. All right, we are now on to presentations. So we have one presentation tonight, that's 7A, the report on the substitute teacher workforce. And looks like Jeremy and Mary Beth.
Thank you, Michelle. Yes, Mary Beth Olin will be presenting tonight, and as she gets ready to get set up, I just wanted to thank the board for allowing us to bring this timely topic to you on the substitute status in the district. If you recall, this is, I think, our 4th year that we kind of brought this back in an annual fashion, and I think it's very important that we're able to highlight and kind of do a check-in on this very important topic. We've been taking a multifaceted approach in trying to address really the county and state and nationwide substitute shortage. So with no further ado, I want to hand it over to Mary Beth Holm.
Thank you. All right. Clicker is not working. Oh, that did work. There we go. So like Jeremy said, kind of a history of what we've done with subs. So a few years ago, the focus was really on increasing the substitute pool. So we expanded recruitment efforts and contracted with swing subs to get additional substitutes, and also contracted with Substantial and introduced sub plans, kind of a standardized template for sub plans at our schools. Last year we came and said that we implemented some really robust professional development for our substitutes, which was very well attended, and that included some a la carte sessions provided by our own teachers on virtual school and all the tools that go along with that, as well as contracting with Substantial and having them provide a community of practice series, as well as some webinars, a la carte webinars throughout the year. Again, very well attended by our substitutes. Now we're back at this year, we're back to increasing the sub pool and not just expanding the numbers, but just expanding the number of jobs that people will take. And so you've probably seen in the news a lot, this isn't a Sunnyvale issue, this is a nationwide issue. Some measures that some schools are having to take is closing down sections. I even heard today at a meeting, sometimes they are, some schools are just limiting the days. They're sort of cutting days from their calendar just because they don't have enough staff or substitutes to man their classrooms. So this isn't just a Sunnyvale problem, it's a pretty serious problem nationwide. This is just a little snapshot from September 20th through November 5th that shows the gap between the total vacancies that we have on a given week, and then the total number that are filled with our sub pool and our swing subs. So these numbers are including that section. So you see that there is a gap, and you can see the vacancies are rising, the number of vacancies.
So again, that's the gap that we are trying to fill in a couple of different ways. So one way is to decrease the demand for substitutes. So that part of that is revising our professional development plans. So we always offer a wonderful PD in this district, and one of the things that the offerings that we've done is trying to break it down into smaller sessions. So instead of having 15 teachers out on a given day, having 3 days where 5 teachers are out on a given day, or breaking it up by grade level, so the demand for subs isn't so high. Another thing that we're doing is Ed Services and the Student Services Department have worked really hard to really prioritize which PD is essential for this year for the restorative restart, and winnowing down to the most essential PD to offer during the school day, as well as exploring other alternatives, including online modules or after-school sessions, so as not to impact the school day and not to have as much demand for substitutes. Another piece that was important was, I think we're one of the first districts to provide symptomatic COVID-19 testing with such a quick turnaround. So without that, we would have teachers out who had symptoms, and they might be out for 3 or 4 days while they waited for their results. So having the symptomatic testing here, where they got the results the next day, also lent to help our substitute issue. So increasing our sub supply is the next challenge, and we did get some support from the state. So they did extend the normal 30-day sub permit. They extended it to 60 days. So our substitutes who could normally only sub for 30 days can now sub for 60 days, which has been helpful. And one for our long-term sub positions like maternity leaves and things like that. They also waived the waiting period before recent retirees can substitute. So there used to be a waiting period where they couldn't sub. Now they can sub right away. And then things that we have done at the beginning of the year in September, we looked around at other districts to make sure that we continue to be competitive in terms of our sub rates. You will see a consent agenda item where we're asking actually to increase that rate, because between September and now, other districts have increased rates. So we want to maintain our competitiveness, and we're also, in addition to increasing those rates, wanting to offer like a retention stipend or something that rewards subs for repeat substitute jobs. So that's on your consent agenda item list. We are continuing to work with Substantial. So we are contracted with them for something called Sub School, which is basically all the programs that they ran last year are self-paced modules that all of our subs have access to. So they have on-demand workshops for classroom management, facilitating instruction. They also have access to join professional learning communities. So again, to try and maintain that, that we respect our substitutes, we see them as professionals, and we want to maintain that connection and that professional development. We've extended our outreach. So we have extended our outreach to different areas other than EdJoin. So everything from advertising at local churches to different job sites, Nova, those kinds of things to try and get more of our local community aware of substitute teaching. And even though it's been difficult, we have actually onboarded 16 certificated and 10 classified since the beginning of the year. And then we're just trying to get creative and make sure that our substitutes have a great experience when they get to the school. So we delivered snack boxes to all of our sites that where when substitutes come, they can grab some snacks or water. They can be part of a raffle to raffle off Starbucks cards, or just something to just make sure that they know that when they come that we really value them and are excited that they're there. Additional support, we did increase our swing sub contract. So in the past we were contracting 3, or we were requesting 3 subs a day, and we have requested 10 each day, certificated and classified. Those haven't necessarily been filled, but that's our request. And then we want to give a huge shout out to our district TOSAs and our site instructional coaches, because they were getting pulled to sub a lot, they still are, but we wanted to try and make it more strategic so that they could have planned time to do the things, their coaching job. So we had them sign up on a calendar for on-call sub days where they're on calls, what it sounds like, and Eileen will come in and see what vacancies there are and see who's on the on-call list and call them. And they've been going to other school sites to sub, elementary schools, middle schools, and so that's been a huge help for our vacancies. So we've huge thanks to our coaching cadre of coaches. And then we have also tried to recruit and hire permanent subs. So we have actually made a couple of offers to some teachers to be a permanent sub, where we're paying them as a temporary teacher. And then they could just be deployed where we put them, but because there's still such a great need to hire just full-time teachers, the ones that we've offered to have accepted full-time teaching positions instead. So we haven't been able to hire them, but we are still looking. So the things that we've tried to do to increase the sub supply and decrease the demand. If you'll see here, just taking a look at the numbers, just gives you another kind of a snapshot. So you'll see the total need is in the yellow. The ideal would be that all of those are covered by those 2 green columns from our pool coverage and our swing subs. And you can see the numbers each week that we're getting. So again, like swing subs, we are requesting 10 per day, and sometimes we're getting 4 or 5 per week. The on-call TOSAs, you can see when we started that in the week of October 18th, that added a lot of subs, but what we're really trying to decrease is that pink column, the site coverage, because what that is, that's our principals, that's our assistant principals, that's our coaches on their not on-call days, on their off-call days, and it's at the middle school, it's teachers during their prep period. So they're doing a lot of subbing, and so that's the column. Well, it could be, if we didn't have the swing subs, if we didn't have the on-call TOSAs, we would be in a much worse situation. So we're glad that we were able to get it down to that level, but that is the column that we really want to try and decrease further, so that we don't have that gap. And just so you know, the unfilled on the right, those are just a few situations where we did need to split classes at the elementary level and add them to other classrooms. So those are this is my ad for anyone who happens to be watching. Those are our snack boxes. So if you want to come sub with us, we're fun. We're cool. You can come sub with us and you'll get compensated well, you will be valued, you will receive professional development, and you might get some good healthy snacks out of it too. So so that is our sub presentation, just kind of the state on subs, showing you what we are trying to do, the different angles we're trying to approach it, and also asking for your help with the compensation piece tonight on your consent agenda item. Any questions?
Thank you. If there's any members of the public who wish to speak on this item, please use the raise hand feature now. Not seeing any board. Is there any questions?
I had a question that I put in here, but I just want to clarify a little more. And that is, I was reading in the school site plans that a lot of the recovery, the academic recovery, relies on not just the teacher training, but also teacher release time. And that, so that they can prep. So have they been able to get to that so far? Or are the subs, because I remember when I was teaching, if we had a training or something and the sub didn't show up, that was the issue then, 1 years ago. So the sub didn't show up, it was well, you don't get to go to training. So, enjoy your day, and luckily you have a great plan. So have they been able to get after that?
So we have been prioritizing the trainings and those pieces. So for example, on days that, or if there are release days on the site level that there have been plans, then those teachers are not asked to sub. So we're really prioritizing not putting them back in the classroom because we have whittled it down so much, the PD, that we want to make sure that what we whittled it down to, that people are able to attend because it's part of the recovery. I'll also add, and this is a question in the board meeting, our SEO TOSAs, the support for equitable outcomes, the ones that are providing direct services to students, we have not yet asked them to be on-call substitutes. That doesn't mean they haven't been, because sometimes there are some days where there are just too many vacancies at a particular site that they may need to be, but they're not as on part of our on-call list at this point. So.
And just my second clarifying question, so you are seeing more need this year, not training aside, just teachers are out sick or they have an emergency or they need a sub for some reason.
We're seeing an increase, so the numbers might be about the same. We're seeing a decrease in the number of jobs that are being picked up. So even though our sub pool is the same size, people aren't picking up as many jobs. So a little bit more reluctance to pick up jobs, but then we're also seeing an increase in PN days. Even though we've seen a decrease, personal necessity.
Thank you.
So personal necessity days, so a slight increase in that. We have seen a decrease in the days for PD. which is great. I mean, not great that we're reducing PD, but to help them to kind of mitigate that shift. Yeah, so I'd say the primary reason for the sub shortage is just our sub pool not accepting as many jobs.
And then last question to follow up on that is, are you seeing that more at the elementary level where there are less vaccinated children, or are you just seeing that everywhere?
We're seeing it everywhere, but I would actually say middle school has been tougher to fill. And that's, I think our sub pool has always reflected that there were more people that were wanting to do elementary than middle, so I don't think that's a new phenomenon. I think that's just a continuation.
My last comment is that I did see on Facebook Mountain View Wisman advertising me personally. No, not me personally, but just in general, they're like, your demographic, we'd like you to come sub for us, just anybody. So Facebook.
Oh, they were doing Facebook.
Yeah.
They're doing Facebook targeted ads then.
Yeah.
But, okay, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Even for testers, they will come to that.
Yeah. Did you have any questions, Isabel? No. Okay, Mary Beth, I just one, like that last slide, do you have like just a one, like is that a one page? Like I made a note, like I could send it to my church organization, like a few different networks, if you have like a one pager.
I've got a whole flyer, everything. If that agenda item is passed, I've got a whole bunch of stuff ready to get sent out tomorrow, so I can send you.
So yeah, so if you send it to me, then I can send like the networks that I'm a part of, yeah. And I've told you, my mom might,
Well, I'll do it.
my mom might start something. She was a teacher way back in the day. And my daughter was trying to get her to do it. And she's like, well, find out how desperate they are. Cause she's really busy and my grandpa's getting sick. But just a few days ago, I was like, Mom, I think they need you. So she's like, give me the information and I'll look into it.
Okay, so,
Got it.
And she's willing to do middle school.
so funny story, a retired teacher friend of mine who was on Facebook wasn't aware of any of this, but she was just her posting was, oh my goodness, I dreamt that I was subbing as a kindergarten teacher. And like all the other retired teachers are kind of laughing. And I jumped in and I said, I can make your dreams come true. Right?
Yeah.
So,
Good one.
and I think she was into it, so.
Yeah.
Excellent. Sign her up.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think, Michelle, if I can add one more thing, behind those numbers, I just want to make sure Eileen Conway gets a huge shout out every morning. She comes in and works with the site admins and literally piecing a puzzle together every day. So I just wanted to make sure we recognize their efforts. And then, just obviously Mary Beth's efforts to just keep this whole train going. The one thing we were just talking about is we've been taking these steps to match, and then we're holding serve kind of, so you can see that if we didn't take those actions, we'd really be under. So we're really trying to now just get ahead of that curve. So, and then just a reminder of the 2 consent items down the road. Really help us out. So.
Will those put us like right in the middle, or will those put us
I
like?
think we're top 5
Yeah.
again, because that's where we were.
Yeah.
And then we sat back a little bit and then we looked again and went, wait a minute,
Yeah.
that's not fair. No.
Keep us in that top tier.
Yes.
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate all that you guys are doing. Okay, we are now on to our review and discussion. So the first one is a discussion on the California School Dashboard Local Indicators. And Christina.
Sorry about this, taller than I am. Good evening, board. Tonight I bring to you for your discussion the California Local Indicators for the state dashboard. 5 out of the 8 state priority areas are measured at the local level, 1, 2, 3, 6, and 7, as approved by the State Board of Education. We utilize the state self-reflection tool and bring to you the report on the measurement of our progress, successes in areas for growth around the California Local Indicators. Maybe I'm misunderstanding. Am I doing the presentation or is it for your discussion? Maybe.
I think you do the presentation and then.
Discussion.
Yeah.
What's it?
Thank you.
Thanks so much. So I just reviewed the purpose of the dashboard. This is we collect all the information from different community members, stakeholders is in this verbiage because that's directly from the state. We provide a quick overview for approval at the local level. These are our 8 state priority areas. As I said earlier, 3 of them are measured by our academic measurement data. So people achievement, number 4, is measured by our state assessment data. People engagement is measured by our attendance, suspensions, expulsions, as well as some other information. And school climate is partially measured by our California local indicators and also partially measured by items such as our suspension rates. Oh, I'm sorry, I combined the 2. All of our local indicators must be updated annually, and we measure these by met, not met, or not met for 2 years. This is our report to the local governing board, and in spring, we'll actually bring this in conjunction with our LCAP updates. That being, we'll take this information and include it in the annual update for our LCAP. Just a visual of what our California dashboard looks like. It is available for the public as well. Anybody in the community. And if you don't remember this happening last year, that makes sense because the state of California suspended the local indicators on the California dashboard due to COVID. So let's talk about our performance. So in priority area 1, the information is around basic services. It's talking about teachers' assignments, if we're appropriately credentialed and if we're matching assignments. We had 0 missed assignments in our teacher areas. We also had 0 areas where our facilities did not meet our expectations for facilities. And we also had 0 students that did not have access to curriculum materials. So 0 sometimes seems negative, but in this case, it's a positive. In priority 2, we talk about the implementation of state standards. We're looking from 1, an exploration and research phase, to 5, full implementation and sustainability. I think in talking with other districts, the goal is always to get to 5. I think anybody that's thinking about where we are in implementation, 5 is always a lofty goal for districts to get to. So looking at our academic standards for curriculum frameworks, our initial implementation in areas of ELD, alignment with our ELA framework, mathematics, next generation science standards, and history social studies. This also makes sense in terms of where we are in implementing these different curricular areas. If you look at the areas where we have full implementation around English language arts, this is where we've had more time and more focus, and we've rolled out the professional development before the other content areas. We're also looking here to make sure that our instructional materials meet the academic standards and curriculum frameworks for our students. Again, we're at initial implementation in similar areas and at full implementation in English language arts. In this case, in the next slide, we're looking at how we're best supporting our staff members. I think that one. Our staff members in implementation in the classroom. So we've looked at where we are in implementation, the curriculum, and then also where we are with our staff members. So here, when we think about our staff members, we're at initial implementation in similar content areas, but we're at full implementation in math in terms of supporting our staff members in developing their implementation in the classroom. Here we're looking at academic areas where they might not equally apply across the board. So for example, in beginning development, we have career and technical education and world language. These are smaller programs at both of our middle schools, as opposed to at the high school level where there's a larger department. So we would expect that could be a little bit lower for us as an area of growth. We're also at initial implementation around the health education content standards, visual performing arts, and at full implementation around our physical education. We also got feedback around working with our school administrators around meeting the professional needs of our teachers. Some of these pieces may seem a little redundant. We go through the state self-reflection tool. So here, in terms of meeting the professional learning needs of our teachers, providing support for our teachers on the standards they have not yet mastered, we're at initial implementation, which again is the 3 in the middle of that ladder that we saw earlier. And we're at full implementation at identifying the professional learning needs of groups of teachers. When we look at priority 3, we're looking at our parent engagement. So similar, we're at full implementation in working and building trusting relationships with our families, creating welcoming environments. And we're at initial implementation in supporting our staff and learning about each individual's strengths. This is an area where we're focusing, as well as providing multiple opportunities to engage in two-way communication. I think this is a place where our sites are working at developing avenues that are outside of our typical communication routes. We're also working on initial implementation at building partnerships with our families to increase student outcomes. And we're at full implementation at building capacity of our principals and our staff to engage families in advisory groups and decision making. Priority 6 is partially measured by our suspensions, expulsions, and attendance, and it's also partially measured by our local data pieces. So in our case, we look at our Panorama survey results from last spring. As you know, our 3rd through 8th grade students participated in the survey. Here you see how many students participated, and then 77% of our students in 6th through 8th grade reported having positive feelings, and 79% of our students in the grades 3rd through 5th reported having positive feelings at school. I'm very proud of that. This is just a breakdown of all the grade levels of students and their feelings, their positive feelings. We break this down at the state level to make sure that we're also having consistent data across different grade levels, because we know that developmentally students change as they age through different grade levels. So you can see here that it's fairly consistent through our grade levels. We don't see a drop in early grades or at middle school. We also look here at different groups of students at school and having school climate. So here you see our data around English learners, as well as our students who have IEPs. So we look at specific groups of students to also make sure that we're not looking at our data holistically without looking at specific students and their needs. Here again, you see that most of the data falls in line with what we're seeing across the district in most grade levels. In priority 7, this is access to a broad course of study. We want to make sure that our students all have access to different content areas. So we look at access to English language arts, English language development, mathematics, science, history, social studies. We do see that all of our students are receiving the core content areas in instruction, as well as enrichment areas such as visual performing arts. And then we see at both middle schools, our students are enrolled in a broad course of study, thanks to the work that our schools have done and the board has done in making changes in the middle school schedules. And then the last slide here we have is just the elective courses that happen at each middle school. There's some slight variation, but there's also some consistency between the two middle schools in terms of access to elective courses. And I think with that, there's a brief summary of our California local indicator data.
Thank you so much. If there's any member of the public who wishes to comment on this item, please use the raise hand feature now. Not seeing any board, so if there's any questions, and then I also just wanted to remind 2 possible kind of questions for us to discuss and reflect are: what are our successes in meeting state priority areas with local indicators? And how do our current plans and focus areas further our growth and process with the California state local indicators. So anyone have any specific questions or thoughts about those?
I have a clarifying question. So when you say positive feelings about school, do you just mean like that's from the section of the Panorama survey where they're asked multiple questions like different ways, and then it rolls out to like in general they feel positive about school, right?
Yeah, and Tasha, feel free to jump in, but there are a number of questions that ask around feelings like, how do you feel happy? Do you have somebody that you can trust? And then we also combine those positive feelings to get a cumulative positive feeling data point.
So it's not positive feelings about school, it's just positive feelings like they're
They're
okay.
Well, they are questions primarily related to school and also primarily related to school and then also at home. Do you have a trusting adult? You know, those type of things. So internally, but also there's specific questions about teachers and school and the learning environment as well.
So, and can you, when you say that like in for some of these things, like we are at beginning development, whatever, and then in other ones we're at initial implementation, like so that's overall at as a district at all of our schools. So one school might be very strong, like very far along with family engagement, for example, and another school, or not just family engagement, but like reaching out to all members and like finding their individualities and all that other stuff. And then another school might not be as strong, but in general, like that's our district. This is a holistic number.
So it is a holistic number. And this is also my first year engaging in our self-assessment survey. I can tell you that when we did the assessment, the range of responses was within a narrow range. So we didn't have any schools at like a 5, and we didn't have schools at a 1. So if we had a 3, which is initial implementation, although it's right in the middle of the scale, what we might have seen is like people at 2.8, and then somebody at like a 4.1. So the range wasn't that wide, the distribution wasn't that wide across the sites.
Okay, and then another question on this, like were the principals the ones mainly taking the survey for the school sites, or like the admin teams, like were they doing this all together so they could like ask questions, clarifying questions, or like did you work with them, like because you know when people take something, like I might say, oh no, that you know like you're thinking of different things, or
yeah, definitely. So we did have at the middle school level it was admin teams. At the elementary it was the principals, and then also like our district administrative team also participated.
And so did they do it together, or?
And we did it together, and some people asked some clarifying questions. Like, it seems like I just answered this question, am I answering it again?
Yeah.
And then we point out like, this is a slight difference in standard implementation versus curriculum implementation versus staff implementation of standards and curriculum. So we did work to clarify pieces.
Okay, and then one other question, like, do you feel like, so if we said on one of these, like priority 6 school climate, 72% of third through 5th grade English learners report having positive feelings. So that means 28% didn't. So in a district of, that's like 1,500 kids maybe, right? So is that number, like, are we seeing this, how does this relate to other years? Like, is this a COVID-ish number, do we think? Or is this about what we've been kind of seeing?
It's not too far from what our averages have been prior to the pandemic. I think this last spring data was more reflective of that. If it would have been some of the data before, you would have saw a little bit, definitely in a dip in some of that data, just a little bit. And then also it's the different questions. So you really do have to go down to student and school level to analyze your data in order to make true meaning of the data. So yeah, the averages give a sense overall, but that's why we use this particular platform, so we can get all the way down to the actual student level and be able to follow up for those who are actually significantly below that positive level of feeling that, or whatever the area might be.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Yeah,
Can I just add one point here to your question, Bridget, about longitudinal and comparative data? This is the process we've been following for the last 5 years in how we collect the data, and it comes across in our data dashboard, the state dashboard, which will be released next month. So that's when you see the longitudinal view. And then there have been a couple of years in between, right, through the pandemic, that there isn't such a wide comparison, but you'll see something from 3 years ago to today. So that will happen in December. So what Christina is sharing with you today is a preemptive view, so that you know what to expect when the state dashboard comes out, which will be sometime next month.
will they be slicing that data like in other ways? Like does the state have information on
They do
anything
not.
about?
It's a self-evaluative process
Okay,
for this piece. The academic data, of course, is different.
sure.
Is there any other questions? Okay, any discussion we wanna have? I think it's good information, yeah?
I just get so concerned about because I think we keep seeing like the percentages, but when you attach percentages to numbers, it's an enormous amount of kids that we're talking about and families, right? So like I think, 28% of 5,500, it's a lot of people we're talking about. So I'm glad that there's so many kids who are feeling positive and like having good feelings. But it does really it highlights for me that there's, over 1,000 kids who are really struggling right now in our district. So, and I think it's great that we're self-evaluating. There was a slide here before where, it's the last slide where it says priority 7, access to a broad course of study. And this looks like there's elective ones. So I asked the question, what's the career technical education at each site? And I think that you said that it was not, that's a high school thing, that isn't us. So is it something that we're going to develop, or is it we're thinking about it?
Well, that's a good question. I think I misinterpreted the question because there's another piece where in another location, high school districts would report on their career and technical education for high school students, which is a different course of study that we don't have. At the middle schools, it looks a little bit different for the different courses. So this could, at SMS, this could include the word wood shop. I don't know why I had a hard time doing that. Wood shop. At CMS, this might include their it's like a STEAM course they had where they were working on creating maker spaces. So that's the career and technical education.
Thank you.
No, thanks for the question and clarification.
Thank you. Well, I think that is right, that reminder, Bridget, putting, it's not saying names, but a number too, right? Just that reminder. I was reading something this week, but just that reminder, right? Which I think our district does a good job, right? That it's not just numbers, but there are people behind those numbers that we care about, and we want to do all that we can for them.
It's actually a really big part of the culture of our principals. So when they report to us at their 3 times a year at the dashboard meetings, they do that. They talk about students individually and get down to that level. So, but it's super encouraging that the board is reminding us how important that is, but that has been part of our culture. And it's hard, but we can't claim success when 28% of our kids, or whatever the metric is, are not being successful. Even though that may be better than someone else or better than we did before, it's not good enough for that 28%.
Yeah.
So thank you for that.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much for collecting the data and sharing it with us, and for all the work that everyone does with all of this data for our students. So thank you.
Yeah. Then a little bit later this evening, you'll see the site SIPSAs, and that also, we keep digging down further, right? So this is 50,000 foot level. We dig further into site plans, and then we'll talk about individual students.
Thank you. All right, we are on to B, the review and discussion on the Educator Effectiveness Block Grant Plan. Mala.
Yes, thank you. So as the name suggests, this grant is primarily to provide professional learning opportunities for all staff classified, certificated, and management. There is a list of allowable uses of the fund that you can see in the template that was provided. And we are recommending that we stay within a few focus areas because the sum of the grant and its expenditure over the subsequent 5 years doesn't warrant us to do just a little bit of smattering of different things. So we focused our areas, and I'd love to answer any questions you have. And today is an opportunity for discussion on the proposal, and this will be brought back for adoption at the next board meeting.
Thank you. If there's any members of the public who wish to speak on this item, please use the raise hand feature now. All right, not seeing any board, I'll open up for discussion and same. So if there's any specific questions or comments you guys have, but then also the two possible kind of discussion questions is, how does this plan align with existing goals and initiatives? And what accountability measures are built into the plan?
So like I mentioned, if you'd like me to go over the details of the plan, we have really narrowed it down to a few focus areas. One of them being our coaching support that we provide to all sites, and having some deeper professional development for PBIS and MTSS teams with outside consultants is one of our proposals. And making sure that our SEL and equity TOSAs remain in that role to really highlight the importance of the work they do, again, spread out a portion of their compensation over the years. And really looking at the work that the MTSS teams are going to be engaged in, and with the accountability that's built in, because there's constant monitoring of data through the academic and the SEL piece to make sure that the work that's happening is definitely in alignment with our focus. As we are aware, English learners have been highlighted a focus for us this year. So we've added that to our LCAP as a separate goal, and are duplicating one of the professional development modules that was developed this year during summer, when we had trauma-informed teaching as a PD that was mandatory for all staff, and replicating that process. And we'll be creating ELD, designated and integrated English language development modules that are not just instructionally based in the classroom, but also involve cultural awareness and parent involvement and parent education through the equity lens that we're focusing on. So all these pieces are really very closely aligned with the district priorities and many of the facets that are in our LCAP plan, because that's something I mentioned even the last time we brought our other plan for adoption, is that we don't want to have many arrows going in different directions. We want to see that alignment so that we are really focusing and we'll see the results in Astute data.
So some of the feedback we've heard before about training was that the teachers who are veteran teachers are receiving a lot of the similar trainings that teachers who are brand new are receiving. And so the teachers who've already been through some of this PD, and I know that whole staffs have been through it, right? So will there be differentiated instruction for our staff?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Is that the plan?
That is the plan, definitely. Mm-hmm. And that's why it's a self-paced module. So there'll be this particular one I'm addressing for the English language learners. It will be, self-paced and the depth. And the other thing we've added, it's been a couple of years now, but what we do is when we get feedback, we make sure it's not anonymous. So the teacher has to put in their name, exactly what they got out of the PD and what would help them implement. And they have one option to say, we already know how to do this well, and I'm happy to support someone else in doing this, or here's what I still need more of. And then that's shared with the coaches, so that the principal and the coaches are able to support, and because we want action, right? We don't want to sit and get PD. It's more about what does it look like in the classroom and how can we really make sure that that is happening in every classroom.
Okay, I have one more question. That's okay. So the other thing that I've heard about training is that sometimes, we do get training that's, from a company or it's on a particular topic and it's, we have a very diverse district and so even though things could be they could be interpreted and applied to our district, sometimes it's just slightly off, so what are when we're getting these people or training programs come in, will we ask them to take a look at who we are? Or is it more like we're gonna just use a curriculum and we'll train ourselves? How is that happening? Or is it something that's an online thing that's just modulated and we just point and click and?
So I think we have a few different options listed in this plan. So I can speak to the English learner option, which, Christina and the coaches will work on, our TOSAs will work on developing, and it'll be in-house developed based on what we know the needs are and where we want to go with using content, because we also want to make sure that the English language development isn't done in isolation. It has to be contextual. It has to be within the context of what is happening in the classroom. So using math is what we're doing this year, So it would be an in-house built module. And then there are some outside presenters, and Nazaretta Hammond and a couple of others that we're proposing that we'll bring in to really deepen, because there comes a point for the teachers that you're talking about, Bridget, teachers, veteran or even newer teachers who've done a lot of professional development, and even our own coaches and our teacher leaders, they reach a point when they want more and they want an expert coming in. So that's why we have this balance of, training the trainers module in a way so that they can do both. Because yes, we've had the experience, we have people come in, and I consider it a backhanded compliment in a way because our staff is so ahead of the curve. I mean, trainers come in and start at ground zero and they're like, we already know all that. We're here, let's move forward. So we really find the in-house facilitation and our trainers to do a much more robust and more tailored job to meet the needs of our audience.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? So my question, I just have one question. It was the one from, and I don't really know. So it was from page 5 and it was talking about the quote from it was, I'll go back to it.
So tell me more about page 5, because this is a very short print. I'm not sure.
Well, it's on page 5 of it.
Page 5 is the instructions that kind of go with the grant.
Yeah.
That's kind of from the state's.
Okay,
The
yeah,
template.
I know that, yeah. But so it's on page 5 of the instructions, right?
Yes.
And so under the purpose and requirements,
Yes.
right, so just saying this is what it needs to be, right? So that one, so it's, if you're looking at it, there's the black bullet and then the first open circle bullet where it says be content focused, incorporate active learning, support collaboration, use models of effective practice, right? All the things that we know and I think we often do. But my question is, what are the metric, because that's kind of my thing as a board member. I'm trying to understand right, we set policy, you guys go do all your fabulous work, and then the accountability piece is showing back, right? And I feel sometimes that piece is not there fully or not there the way I need it, maybe, I don't know, right? So when I was reading that, I was okay, those are all things that we all know we should be doing. So how, as a board member, am I going to know if we are doing those things with the PD or other things we're doing? Does that make sense? Okay, so that's what my question is kind of related to that piece.
Just 2 reminders to speak slowly for our interpreters, and also if you could please pull the mic more closely.
Me?
Thank you.
Yes.
The slower one was for me. I know that. And Jeremy, but Jeremy's not talking, so it's on me.
Yes.
So that's the question is just, yeah,
It's a great consideration, and I just add, not going to be very specific here, but I will add that the guidelines, the parameters are broad because they want us to, obviously put in the pieces that we do for training within those so that they are effective. And we know that different trainings and different supports require a depth in different areas. So there would be one that's really contextually based, right? There would be one that's a little more, you make sure it's interactive and it's engaging and learner oriented. And so there would be different components that would be applied. And in our description of the different ones, like the one for, say, the GLAD strategies for preschool, have different components than the one that has the module built in for the English language development, which will be a little different from the trainer of trainers module for our teacher leaders with the outside consultants. So there are different layers of where these facets would be embedded.
Yeah, okay, I kind of understand, and I guess part of it is, like, I don't know if this specific one is coming back to us later, I mean, it's for approval, but like, I don't know if they're actually, for this specific one, there is follow-up where you're, because a lot of times you're reporting back to the board, right? So if this one doesn't have that, I'm good for this specific one. If it does, I would love to see when we approve it, or I don't know, at some point, like, if there is a follow-up, what is it that we're, like, how do I know if we have done those things, right? So I would love to know, like,
Yes.
how will I know that? If that's something that we have to do for this specific one. If we don't need to do it for this one, that's fine. But hopefully how I explained just now will help for the future, like when we do the LCAP, right? Like, how do I know if we're doing these things? And sometimes I'm not feeling like I know what I should be looking for.
So I can recommend that even if the state doesn't ask for it, we could have an annual update. It is a 5-year plan that this encompasses, and there could be an annual update. So the last Educator effectiveness grant that we wrote, Lori and I, 3 years ago, and we had a period of time in which to fulfill what we had put together that we would do, and I did an update to say that this is what we did, but it didn't come to the board, it went straight to the state to, absolutely qualify exactly what we said we would do and how the fact that we actually did it. But I see no reason why it can't be brought up here because there are 4 or 5 areas, and we could, for each of them, just give you an annual update on here's what we've accomplished, here's what happened. Could be a short summary.
I have a question, but are you asking for measurable goals?
Not necessarily for this specific one, but I mean, like, right, I think with this, right, I'm trying, for a couple of years, right, so I mean, like, at some point for some things, like the bigger things like LCAP, right? This I don't necessarily need, because it's not something we have to have, right, as a board, right?
I would suggest as an observation, there have been so many small grants that have come in the last year that it is like kind of the opposite of the local control funding formula concept. There's all these new categoricals that's making it hard for boards to check on individual progress on individual grants.
Well, so
Because
I'm
there's
less
so many.
concerned about like this one necessarily,
Right.
like if we're supposed to, then yes, but I'm less concerned.
Yeah.
But it just made me
So,
think about that
as things
general,
come
the
up,
general piece of
Yeah,
like,
as things come up, think of that accountability piece. But
Yeah.
then, I mean, that's the LCFF concept where what are the most important things to our district, and let's be measurable about those.
yeah,
So
like measuring, I think having more when the LCAP is
That would be the
more of
I
a
think so.
priority.
And
Yeah.
when we keep saying, right, that we're aligning all our plans to the same goal. So the LCAP goals really are encompassing, there's nothing in this plan or the last one I presented at the last board meeting that are totally separate from what we're saying are our priorities.
They fit in with those as well.
It's equity, it's MTSS, it's, yes,
that's a good point.
English learners.
Well, and like, I don't wanna get in the way of the money, honestly. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, if the purpose is to like,
Yeah, I don't wanna make
get
it work.
money, I don't want us to be like, oh my gosh, I don't wanna write another grant, because then we're gonna have like one more thing to keep track of, and we just, like, it's too much. Like,
Yes,
so
I
I wanna be able to get what we need, if we have the opportunity. I mean, that's just my opinion. But then, the other thing is, I feel like, as grants come up, I mean, the ones that I'm really hoping for are ones that are, because I don't wanna train our teachers to death as well. You know, like we don't have any subs for them to do it right now anyway. So, I mean, hopefully we'll get more subs and that problem will go away, you know, it'll be great. But I don't wanna, you know, I also don't wanna just, I don't know, I just don't wanna create burdens, you know.
Great work.
But I'm super excited about the opportunity for this and the fact that it's gonna help the people that you're talking about in here, so.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else? We ready to move on? Thank you so much for all your work and the team behind you. All right, we are on to item C, review and discussion on board policy 1312.3, uniform complaint procedures. Tasha.
Yes, let me get there, I had it, and then I went back to the plan. So this is an update to our uniform complaint procedures, in particular distinguishing between our uniform complaint and also our Title IX obligations. Also specifying that we have separate obligations with like our state preschool, there's kind of a separate process for that. And then also for our special education program. So just kind of really delineating when people have concerns in our school community, the process by which they will be able to get their complaints addressed in the most appropriate way. And then just also aligning more concretely with our federal program monitoring instrument so that we really don't want to have to do that. We had, I think that was 4 years ago we did that, right, Mala? But also this is a process that is aligning with that. So in the event we had to go through a federal program monitoring, it would align with that instrument that we would have to utilize for our uniform complaints. So coming for discussion around this particular item.
Thank you. If there's any members of the public who wish to speak on this item, please use the raise hand feature now. And not seeing any board, is there any questions or comments? We good putting it on consent for next time?
Yep.
Okay, great, thank you. We are on to D, review and discussion on board policy 5113.1, chronic absence and truancy. And Tasha again.
Thank you. So this is updating our policies with regards to attendance and really trying to tie the attendance to a tiered system as we do all of our other academics, behavior, and the other areas that we target. And just really emphasizing our approach and our work regarding reduction in chronic absenteeism for students. And just being sure that we are monitoring on a regular basis at the site level as well as the district level with our SAR boards and things of that nature to be sure that we're really staying on top of when students are not coming to school and the reasons that they're not.
Thank you. If there's any members of the public who wish to speak on this item, please use the raise hand feature now. And not seeing any board, is there any questions or comments? We're good putting it on consent. All right, thank you. We are on to E, review and discussion on board policy 5141.31, immunizations. And Tasha again.
So this is an update in particular around special populations and other unique exclusions and exemptions that were allowed prior to, but now some of those exclusions have been deleted and are outdated. And so this is an update to that and also ensuring that at each of the intervals that students are getting the immunizations that are required, including the requirements at grade 7 for middle school students.
Thank you. If there's any members of the public who wish to speak on this item, please use the raise hand feature now. All right, board, is there any questions or comments? We're good putting it on consent for next time?
No, there was someone put a comment in about confusion about the COVID vaccine. This isn't about the COVID vaccine because it's not on there.
Yeah,
Right.
that hasn't come to be decided upon yet.
Okay. I'm good with consent.
Okay, so on consent for the next meeting. Okay, I think right now we maybe want to do a 5-minute recess, but before we do that, I'm gonna propose, what if we, because like the last 3 discussion items, we don't necessarily need all of staff here, so what if we do, whoever made the motion for the agenda, what if we put the consent agenda before those items? Does that work, Dr. Gallagher?
Yeah, we can do that.
We can
Amend
do,
the-
like that's, so yeah, so we'll amend it to do consent right now, take our 5-minute pause, and then we'll come back to our last 3 review and discussion items.
I think that would work.
Okay, did you?
I did make the motion,
Okay.
so what do I have to do?
So you're amending your motion to do consent next.
Okay, I'd like to amend my motion to approve tonight's agenda to do consent next before continuing with
Review and discussion.
9
You're gonna say the review and discussion.
review and discussion items. Okay, remaining review and discussion items.
Yep.
Okay.
Second. If there's any members of the public who wish to speak on this item, please use the raise hand feature now. All right, board, any discussion? All those in favor
Of the
of the amended
amended agenda.
agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and with that, the motion passes. All right, so we are now on to consent. If there's any members of the public who wish to speak on any consent agenda items, please use the raise hand feature now. All right, board, is there a motion? Are you,
So we approve and then if we want to pull. to
well,
discuss.
you'd pull it right now.
I
So
would
make a
like,
motion to pull it.
yeah, I would like to make a motion to pull item letter N to discuss briefly
And then approve the rest of the consent.
and then
as
approve
listed.
the rest of the consent.
I don't think you actually need to make a
No.
motion to pull it. You can just say, I'd like to approve the consent calendar with the exception of letter such and such.
And to discuss.
Yeah, and then we can discuss it after we approve the rest of the consent calendar.
Okay, so
That.
I would, exactly what Mike said. I would like to make a motion to
That
approve the
motion.
consent agenda with the exception of letter N, just to briefly discuss,
Okay,
which is school plans for student achievement.
is there a second?
Yeah, I second.
Okay, all those in favor, so be approving the consent minus N for discussion. All those in favor, please say aye. Chair votes aye, and with that, the motion passes. So then brief discussion on N.
Okay, so first of all, I would just like to say, I really read through these things with a fine tooth comb and I poured over, I had so many notes and I only came out with, I really got down to 2 questions. Okay, so I worked really hard on channeling 2 questions. But I just wanna first compliment the schools and the teams and everyone who worked on these, because this is the first year where I felt like this is where the plan was. You know what I mean? Like, since other ones, it's like, oh, some of them are super detailed and some are just like, well, check in a box, like, it's a form for the county and it's what we're doing, but it's not a big deal. I mean, this one, like, everything was so thoughtful and you could really see like how things were being applied, and like you could see, like, it was very clear to me that like this was their plan, like this was a planning document, or they faked it really well. So I really appreciated it because it was very communicative about what the plan was for this very important year of returning to in-person instruction.
So, just before you ask your questions, I want to just say one thing. The reason that the plans are so coherent and so aligned and so well written is because of this lady standing right here. She has worked with every single school and spent limitless hours in having conversations, in having group sessions, in having planned writing parties and in really being so thorough. At one point, I mean, more than one point, I've even said, Christina, you've got so many other things on your plate. And she says, no, I really want them to be, the best they can be. So I just wanted to compliment her on the work that everyone's done.
Well, it's great reading, yeah, it's great reading, tremendous, right?
Yeah, it was, yeah, I did notice the difference. The last one this one is very comprehensive, and I was talking about it today with Mike, like going through it today. It's great.
Okay,
It
quick
explains a
thought.
lot.
Oh, sorry, finish your thought and then I'll pause.
Yeah, no, that it explains a lot of how we're approaching all the things that we've been talking, how they come down to each school and each plan.
Just a procedural, Jesus, do we need to make a motion for this before we're talking about it?
We can talk about it.
Okay, we just normally make motion.
For discussion.
Okay, thank you.
That was that the motion to pull it for discussion?
Yeah, that's why I was just a little bit confused just as how to do with consent stuff, so, go ahead, continue.
Okay, so for me, where I noticed, because there's only 2 of them, the middle schools really stood out for me on in a couple of areas of having some really, differing availability of things for kids who are really struggling. Differing, everything from schedules to like things that teachers could refer students to, like extended time and whatever. And I understand that's because systems of support are set up differently at each of the schools and the schedules are set up differently at each of the schools. But for me, it's like and I was shocked at how inexpensive some things I thought would be very expensive were for student-facing time. Not working with coaches and working with adults and training everybody, but the student time or family support items seem shockingly inexpensive. And I understand that like $2,000 or one of them was like $500. I was like, how is this? What, like, can we get 10 of these? Like, what is happening? So it was shocking to me. And I understand that those dollar number items, maybe because they're added to something else that's already there. So I get it. But for me, I really want to have our middle school students, particularly our students who are socioeconomically disadvantaged and their families, to be able to have a similar support experience regardless of the geographic areas where they live. So whether that's some sort of a before school counseling, after school tutorial, because whether it's a family resource center, whether it's, like whatever systems are being developed, it would just be so great if it wouldn't matter where you lived, that you could get that if you needed that. And, I appreciate that, that a lot of times we're saying we want data because we want to make sure that these interventions we're proposing are going to be working. So where are the test scores and let's make sure it works. But there's lots of national studies that show that these items would work. And this is the first time we're getting this one-time money or we're getting this extra money and we're doing those things this year. And so, we're building on our systems. So I just feel so strongly about it. And I think that we can get there if we make a plan to get there. It doesn't have to be overnight. But what happens is in the schools where those extra systems aren't there, it falls on the teacher. It falls on the individual teacher in that classroom and to make up, to try to support those struggling students. And not everybody, there's no system of support there, it's not as developed in one as in the other. So I think everyone's working really hard and everyone's really exhausted, but like us as the leadership, that's what I value. I would value that even if not everybody's equal, that we as a district are thinking about creating systems that are supportive for all our kids.
So maybe like the direction would maybe be like, what small steps can we do this year? But then also in the spring, as we're developing plans, having a more thorough discussion of how can we make sure both middle schools have the same supports for the low SES students.
For the experiences of those students and their families, from being welcomed to, having a resource, knowing who to go to just the student needing additional support. And the other thing that really stood out to me is that the AST time at SMS is a catch-all for everything. And it only averages out to 43 minutes a day. And I'm very concerned for those kids who are, maybe they're not low enough to get the intervention from the TOSAs, but the kids who are far behind, like let's say they're reading at like a 5th grade level, it's not so low, but it's low enough that if they're doing everything their teacher's asking them to in the classroom, everything takes twice as long. So the teacher tells them, okay, we're gonna front load vocabulary for you. And then I want you to read it twice and I want you to highlight and I want you to annotate. It takes them twice as long to get through that. That means that they have more work to do at home, and they're being asked to come in and retake tests or, even finish exams during that AST time. If they're English learners, they're supposed to already be assigned to a class during that time. Do you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So they're never gonna get that English instruction if they're also English learners, but they're also behind, they're retaking tests, they're doing this, they're supposed to get support in math. They're being pulled a lot of directions. So I hope that we can, as we're planning for next year, I hope that we can look at like the support for those kids, whether it's extended time or just a plan that's gonna support them.
Mm-hmm. And I heard two things there: extended time, like during the school day, but also like the potential for after school. Am I hearing that right?
One of the middle schools has some after school support time, before school support time, assigned office hours, and the other school doesn't have that. They have everything goes to the one block of time. Mm-hmm. And it sounds like a lot of minutes during the week, but 43 minutes a day, if you're putting all your stuff in there, is maybe not enough time. So I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but I'm just concerned about that as a catch-all for everything. Mm-hmm.
All right, so looking at those, what can be done this year, but then specifically really next year, how we can.
But I think this year, like I was telling Mike, there is some urgency. There are plans that we can, see if we can sustain. There are things that we should do to improve over the years and find plans. But there is also, these kids keep growing. They don't stop until we have the system in place. They happen to grow every year and move to the next year. And we keep, graduating kids to high school that may not be prepared. And then it's like this storm is coming and winter is coming. And they're going to be there and they don't know how to read. They cannot follow math. They don't, so if we can do, what can we do? Like if we have these systems, as I was telling Mike today, like we don't have all these plans and we have all this data and we have extra money this year that is paying for a lot of the stuff. Then can we double down in something? There is like one key, one of these three main things that we're having right now is there is an answer in any of them that we can say maybe if we can double down in this particular strategy or the other, I mean, there are at least 3 plans that we're having parallel right now. Is there any of them that is worth saying, like, maybe we can do this so we can catch everybody who is under 50%? Or more people, not just 20%.
Well, yeah, one school is going after a different percentage than the other school, and it may be because of numbers. So like, that's the thing is that like, so if there are things that we can do this year, and I know we need the bodies, we need the teachers, we need the social worker, we need the right people, we need all that stuff. But
Don't give up on this year, is what I mean.
don't give up on this year for, and especially for the things that that we have other schools doing that. Do you know what I mean? So it's not like there is a system that we've done, we could duplicate it, we could apply it to a similar need somewhere else. So, and it wasn't like when SMS was here last week, they gave the report and how things were going. And at the end, when you were talking about, well, would you like, could we get you an extra coat? Could we get you some more help? And she was like, yes, I don't think that, reinforcements would be declined, if it's, and for me, it's the people who would be not working to train people, but working with the students or the families, Okay, so that's my thoughts. So do you have thoughts on that, or?
Well, I just was echoing, right, that I think that like do what we can this year.
Yeah.
And then make sure we plan for next year. Right, as you were talking about, I think a lot of it's like, we have the money, but if we can't hire people, right, like, that's tricky too, right? If we could like wave a wand and just have like magically like 15 qualified people to come fill all of our spots, like,
well, like,
that would make your job easier, right?
Well, like, last night at the Santa Clara School Boards Association, the two of the people that they had on the webinar, that one was the Los Altos Mountain View, the elementary school district, the Los Altos Elementary School District, and then the other one was the high school district, kind of in the same area. But they said, oh, we hired 10, they went from having like 2 social workers to having like 5 counselors and 5 social workers specifically to try to do family engagement. And they hired them as contractors through the end of the year. It wasn't a forever thing. And I think like a short term, even if we just started with like, how can we get people,
Okay, I think we have the direction.
So Jesus, so we vote on N now, right?
Correct.
Okay, do we need to make a motion for that? Okay, thank you.
I move that we approve consent agenda item N.
I second.
Okay, we don't need to do public comment since we'd already had it from before, right? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and with that, the motion passes. Thank you so much, Christina, for all of your work and all the schools for those plans, and we appreciate everything that everyone is doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna take a quick 5-minute recess, and then when we come back, we will do our last 3 review and discussions. For those in person and virtual who are not continuing with us, thank you so much and have a good night.
There's nobody in my house. And I was like.
We always love having you. And having you thought.
Come back here, I couldn't, I didn't know if I'd be able to see from there. Like, am I gonna be able to see it? Because I don't have it memorized. She is?
She is.
Oh my goodness.
I was like, oh.
I know.
I think she finally just left.
That is so
But she was with us
interesting.
the whole time. I was like, that's interesting. I didn't see that name pop up.
I know, I mean, that would be.
So, yeah.
So how many people do you
The height was 17, now it's 7.
You can send them to see if people accept it.
That's right. Ooh, it's so delicious. It's delicious. Go ahead, Safeway.
All right, tomorrow's the day.
Okay, what are your favorite brands? What was yours before that? I like this. Yeah, I like the strawberry, but they have a ginger berry and a red one and this, it's delicious. My new favorite. Sorry.
Sorry.
Huh?
We should have
Oh, okay. Send them, I'll send it tonight. Yeah, I was revising my, our website for the, subway. And, flyer.
No, I'm gonna take off. When I go through, I'll close the gate behind me and then I'll shut the gate on the way out too. No, I'll shut it. The vehicle gate? Yeah, I'll close it. I got it. Thanks very much. Hey, have a good night. I'll see you tomorrow, okay?
So we're zooming on your side tomorrow?
Yeah, we're doing interviews and Zoom whenever that.
Oh, everything's over there?
Mhm.
Oh, okay.
So I'll just set up, I don't know if there was like scheduling conflict with you, but.
Okay, well, that's fine.
My understanding was that's what we're doing. I haven't actually looked at the itinerary, but that was
No,
my
right.
impression that
I
we
know
were just
Laura
gonna.
sent something out, but I didn't take a look.
Okay, yeah, it will just be in the conference room.
That works.
All right, see you tomorrow.
Okay, you too. Drive safe.
Thank you. Night, Tasha. See you tomorrow.
All right, thanks.
Were you there today?
There's tomorrow.
That's right, it is tomorrow.
How many you have?
4. Well, 3 tomorrow and 1.
Oh, God. I was ready to say, yeah, you like to go.
Well, 1 maybe.
Yes, thank you. No, I get it. The next time I'm superintendent,
I don't know, I called and I was tempted to say, oh, it's funny. Well, that's a road, just look at the time, the time of the night.
Yes, they are.
My family barely got afford you, but this is.
That's interesting.
Yes, there is. Thank you for asking. You like just.
And he was all, I don't know.
Yeah. I think so.
So it's a danger.
Is this the best way for Zoom and stuff, or like, you know, sometimes when we have the informal meetings, we're at the table, but like there's hardly like anybody here. Like, do we just like it this way? What do you think?
I don't know, it's just how we do it.
Okay, just checking.
Fair question.
This favors the live audience.
Yeah. All right, we're reconvening at 8:47. So we are on 8F, the discussion on next steps. This is on, sorry. Discussion on next steps from board self-evaluation session. So it was included in the packet, but we also have it here printed for you guys. So I know sometimes just having like it right in front of you can be helpful. So we wanted to, like, so essentially for this item, we wanted to go through, kind of just like we should go through this quickly, right? If there's anyone has any like clarifying questions or just want to understand something a little bit better, from like the strengths of our team, the areas to focus on, or anything else from it. So we can have a kind of a short discussion on that, and then I'm gonna hand it over to Mike, and then with that discussion, then we're also gonna talk about kind of schedule stuff, and then also what future topics, not study session topics, but like related to governance development, like based on our self-evaluation, what are the topics we wanna focus on next year in our governance development. So that's kind of the things under this agenda item. So I'm thinking if we can just take maybe like 10 minutes, possibly 15, if we feel like we need to have a little more time to kind of go over this. If anyone had any questions or things that were like, oh, that was interesting to me, or whatnot from it. Did you have something, Bridget? I thought you were saying something earlier. Okay.
I was trying to figure out like what letter, what number, just wanted to get this like a.
Oh, get back onto there,
I
yeah,
got it,
but you got it, yeah.
Thank you.
So I think we could just, if no one has something specifically, let's just real quick go over the areas to focus on, because I think from that, well, then in a few minutes when we discuss future topics, right, I think we would pull from those, right? So I'll just kind of go over that real quick, and then if people have questions or thoughts about it. I just realized, if there's any members, we can go back to public comment. If there's any members of the public who wish to speak on this item, please use the raise hand feature now. Not seeing any. Okay, thank you. Okay, so the areas to focus on. So it looks like there's kind of 6 main areas, and if you guys remember, we had, based on the evaluation, and we had done where we each kind of picked which ones were most important, and then we put it on the board. Paper. Thank you, the chart paper, yes. Okay, so one of them was the roles and responsibilities. And so individual board members do not attempt to direct the superintendent, so that's one of the focus areas. The next is board operations. Board members follow agreements on how to bring up new ideas. Board members follow agreements on how concerns from the community will be handled. And the third one is board meetings. The board confines its meetings to a reasonable length of time. There is a good relationship between how long the board spends on an agenda item and the importance of the item. The fourth one is setting direction. And under that was the board adopts long-range priorities. The board uses the district's mission, core beliefs, and vision to drive district performance. The board adopts clear and measurable indicators to assess district performance. The fifth one is structure. The board has an effective process to review, revise, and adopt policies. And the sixth one is accountability. The board monitors student progress against established benchmarks. So if anyone has maybe any like thoughts or questions about those, we can have kind of a short discussion. No.
Well, I think, that some of these, I would say, some of these are us trying to reflect on the last year. And so I think that some of these things, like, for example, following agreements on how to bring up new ideas. I think just within the last 2 meetings, we've added a way to do that at a board meeting, to talk about, like, I think it's become more clear. So I feel like, and also with just 5 people filling out the survey, if like there was one of the questions, it was just like, there was just some data that just seemed to be a little bit off.
Some of the data might be a little bit off on the results.
It could sway us one way or the other, where maybe it wasn't. What it tells me is like maybe some of these things are maybe more in the middle, but it might have skewed harder to one side or the other because of that, data issue. But like in general, I'm interested in working on all of these, and I think the ones that really strike me as super important are the setting direction. I mean, they're all important, but I think like that's where
those are the ones that you'd want to focus on.
that's something that I really want to focus on, and we have a new superintendent, you know, we have a few new board members, newish compared to people with a lot of experience, you know, and so it's an opportunity to really like get some discussion together about what we want to do as direction, build in feedback from the public, and you know, and move forward. And I think also post-COVID, you know, one day we'll be completely post-COVID, but right, that's the dream. Or, you know, I know I've heard somebody say.
Post-pandemic, COVID will be with us for a long time, but post-pandemic.
Yeah, so I think that we have to think about recovery, but you know, it really forced everyone to think about like what is essential about school and what we value. And I think it's a really great opportunity to like focus on direction now. Like it's like people's minds are open. So I don't know, that's everything else is like business, you know?
Yeah.
But
and I agree that some of them I think we are getting better on, right? Like that one that you mentioned, I think also the board can find its meetings to a reasonable length of time. I think we like, right? So I think a lot of these we maybe weren't so great, but they're in a place that I think feels different now than it did a few months ago. Isabel or Jeff, do you have any thoughts about any of these you want to share or anything else from the packet?
Well, no, I think
Want to get your mic a little closer to you?
we talk about all of this in the governance meeting. It's a brief of what we say, and I think we already, our conclusions already, I think is very accurate to what we did that day.
Yeah, a good summary of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think you want to add? Okay. I think I'll just add, I think I am the same with Bridget of all these different areas, that's the area for me personally that I would love to see us focusing on, that same direction. It reminded me when Bridget was talking, when we were at that night, right, talking about like, I think we are generally, and Nancy and I heard now, but I think you would, Nancy too, like the five of us are generally in the same space, but because we haven't had time to really do this, sometimes, right, like it looks like we match up less than we do sometimes, I think because we haven't been able to do as much of that. So I was just thinking about that piece of it as well. Okay. If we're good with that, then I will hand it over to, I mean, we're all gonna talk, but I'll just like, Mike will lead us in the next.
Yeah, there's kind of two areas that I wanted to talk about. Like one is like next step in terms of board development and governance development, thank you. And my thought is that it's probably a broad way to look at all this is to go back to the governance handbook, especially through the lens of by trustee areas. So when I've been talking to parents, I think talking to you individually, there's concern's probably the right word, but as we move to by trustee areas, it's very important that each trustee maintains an interest in the overall district, not just the trustee that they represent. And like we're all nodding because we've all been, you all elected district-wide. But the next person to come, we don't know who that person is. So I think that it would be useful just in and of itself to go through the governance handbook. But then to do it through that lens, I think makes a lot of sense. The other thing that I would recommend is, and this is a little bit different than governance development, but I guess it's related, is that when we identify the priorities of the board or the district or the superintendent, which all should sort of be the same thing, that those be focus areas of deep discussion. So to set aside significant amount of time and to organize our meetings so that there's significant amount of time to go into those in depth, like we're going to do in the January board meeting on English learners. But I would offer that we should probably do that for equity We should do that for MTSS. We should do it for all, whatever our main focus areas are every year, to like really set aside a significant amount of time to dive in and to do checkpoints throughout the year. And that establishes those as the main priorities, and it's builds the accountability too if we check in on it throughout the year. So I'll stop there and just see what the reflection is on that. And then we can talk a little bit about structuring the meetings and the times and stuff like that, because I have some ideas on that too.
Thoughts, comments? You like it? I would say that sounds good to me, and I think all right, that makes sense, right? Like if we're saying these are the priorities, then this is what we should be spending our time on.
Yeah, and I've heard from
I think loud enough.
kind of in the different trainings, and the trainings that I go to are really like talking to other superintendents, which is great because you get to hear what other districts are doing. The theory is when a board goes deep into the high level priorities, then the meetings are more efficient because there isn't, individual members don't have questions like, well, what are we doing about, fill in the blank, whatever it is, because they know either a discussion is coming or they just had a discussion or they're more well informed that way. In talking to Sapita about next steps, she recommended that once a year, there'd be a significant amount of time, like an all-day board or governance team development meeting. And so that one might be that one that I was talking about, diving into the governance handbook. I would recommend that whatever we come up with in terms of a cadence of meetings, that we stick with it year over year, so that new members coming on know that, when you sign up for the board, there's going to be an all-day, if we do that, like there's going to be an all-day meeting in the spring and maybe one in the fall, and then all the other meetings, there's 2 meetings a month, like they know what it is. So that isn't, we're not like adding meetings, because that's where it throws people's schedules off. If they anticipate it, then it makes sense. So I would recommend that. Another construct that Sapita recommended that kind of, at first they didn't like it, but then I don't know what you think, is instead of like an all-day Saturday, this is gonna sound horrible, so think about it. Like maybe you start like on a late Friday afternoon, like 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, and do 3 hours, and there's dinner included. And then everyone goes home, and then you pick it up again the next morning, like at a reasonable hour, like 9 o'clock, something like that, and go to like 1 o'clock. So it's the equivalent of a whole day, but you get the advantage of it being broken, so there's reflection time, and it doesn't feel like a whole day. So that's just one concept. Or we could do a whole day, like on a Wednesday or a Saturday, or we could do 2 half days. But the idea is like to really do the work. I think I agree with Sapita that you need to really dive into it. And it's just scheduling that and then making that consistent for board members so that they know what to expect down the line. So I'll stop there.
And we could also try it.
Right.
Because I think if you say, well, and we will do that forever in perpetuity, that's a lot harder to agree to.
I was thinking that. I was thinking that as I was saying.
It's a great idea.
I was thinking that as I was saying.
Yeah.
Try it.
Yeah.
Check it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I like the idea. I do though. I remember, Sapita said that when she was on a board, they did their big retreat like that in July. I personally would prefer not to do July. Like I really like that July is kind of mostly our month off, and that's my time to like just play with my kids. And like I'll usually come and do like a summer school thing. So I would prefer, I like the idea of a bigger thing, but I would prefer it not to be in July. Like I would like to keep July as kind of our break month. So that's my only kind of comment.
It could be like early August, or it could be, it doesn't, I don't know. I kind of agree with you, like that's been our pattern, that there's a month off. And that gives board members a chance to plan too, like they know like, oh, that's my time off.
Travel or.
Yeah, whatever I'm gonna do.
Yeah.
So.
I like that idea. I like the idea of having a break too, like, maybe going home and letting things percolate and, and then
Sometimes
coming
you-
back the next day and,
Sometimes you have thoughts later, like, oh, this.
And also if things aren't going well, it gives everyone a chance to reset.
But that's true,
I mean,
yeah.
but I think, I also really like the idea of going through the governance team handbook in the context of trustee areas, especially while both Jeff and Nancy are both, on the board. Because I think it'll be like giving a lot of.
With their longevity and context
Yeah,
and history.
that's right, a lot of context, and I think that would be great, and it would give us some purpose, for me, sometimes it's hard for me to like justify. I understand it's important to invest in like building the relationships about governance, and I appreciate it, and I do learn a lot, and once I'm there, I'm fine. But sometimes I just go like, we should be talking about the other stuff,
Yeah.
like it's just so hard to like pause and do that because, and I know I could
Building
just,
the foundation to be more
I know.
successful there.
but it's just so, so I think that like, I'm also very excited that we're gonna have some meetings where we're doing these other focus meetings, because that's gonna help me feel more, positive.
I wonder, Isabel and Jeff.
I was just gonna say, Jeff, Isabel, your thoughts?
Yeah, that as long as we have time to do the important things, as you say. I do have a lot of questions on how it's gonna be after, like you say, we need to go down to the board, the book of the board and figure out how we're gonna work once we are divided into districts, so we can still have the focus of the whole district and care about all the schools. And for example, the site visits that we still have, see a broader picture of what is happening everywhere, not just in your district school. We care about everybody.
Right, everything you said makes sense to me. I mean, I think I've said that I think we just need more have better agreements on the governing, areas, but I never really thought about taking time to just do that with intention. That makes sense. So, sounds good.
Okay.
I mean, you're right that doing the work on Friday night and waking up on Saturday sounds like an awful idea, but it does make sense though. Couldn't be all day Wednesday. I couldn't do that. I would suggest like maybe end of June or something.
Yeah.
Because that would give us some time. We can always revisit in August after July and stuff too. I don't know.
Yeah.
We usually feel pretty good in June, right? Like the last weekend of school.
And if there's,
Yeah.
yeah, and then if there's something to do, like, rework some sections of the handbook or something, then we could kind of do that and then have something to come back with, on vacation from wherever.
So
I will say that I do agree with you though of making it standardized, because I think that's the number one question we get when we have people are thinking about going to board. How much time does this take? And it can actually, the more we can actually roll out a calendar with expected commitments, it does help minimize the surprise or allow people to plan it out. So
yeah, like I think example of that too, and I'll go back to the other piece is, sorry, I can't look at both you guys now, so I'm gonna look at them, but I'm talking to you too. What is this? Oh, like, right, so the superintendent evaluation, right? Like, if we can get it in like a really good cycle, like, okay, we just had to like throw in like, okay, what day works for everyone to like do the superintendent evaluation, right? So we had to just piece it together, but if we can get even like those pieces too, like, okay, and like we've had to adjust occasionally if something comes up, but we have it set like, okay, we're gonna have an extra meeting in April to do the superintendent evaluation or whatever. Like, I think having those pieces in there too, where again, they might need to get adjusted, but if they're there, like on the schedule, I think that will make it helpful for all of us. So going back specifically to this year's longer one, I'm good anytime, like right beginning of the school year sounds good. June, like sometimes I feel like I'm a little bit burned out, but I'm also good with June. But so I'm good with ever normally, but if we are doing a governance handbook to prep for election, like that needs to happen probably a little, I mean, maybe June, but that might even be a little bit too late, because I think usually, like I think when you and I did the last where we like had people come, like the informational thing. I think we did that like the second or third week in June, didn't we? Because then you can start pulling your papers. When is it, end of June or beginning of July?
It's roughly 4 months before election.
That much sooner, so you might even pull your papers before
So
you even
the
have a
deadline
meeting,
is
but I know the deadline's beginning of August.
The deadline was on my birthday one year, so mid-August.
So that would be, that's making specifically for this, so if we wanna have a set time for other years, like that's June or August, I'm totally good with that. But I do wonder if
we should have it sooner.
If we need to do it sooner.
Maybe with March or.
Do you have a comment?
I do have a comment.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to consider after election time and then during election time, right? So you have after November, December kind of time, and then election year, so the time frame before the election. So there's two different areas to really consider. It's possibility kind of like a spring, fall, but maybe two in the same time frame.
I'm not fully following.
So election happens November.
Yeah.
People get seated in December. So new people won't know about stuff. So they're gonna go through governance, they're gonna do all kinds of training, but they're still learning, right? So in that process, there might be a governance time that you want to spend on whatever it is that you want to deep dive into. For them to really grasp more information, because they're gonna get small increments of training, but it takes pretty much a full year to really grasp most of it. But then you still have more questions.
Yeah.
Right, so I'm just thinking that in those areas that new people come onto the board, they want to dive into something probably pretty quick.
Yeah.
Something to think about.
Yeah. Well, and I think besides the bigger tree, I think we still want to have our like one or two, where it's like an evening like development. And I think also what that reminded me too is the important piece of that team building stuff that you want to do. I think every time we have to, even though we've done it, every time there's a new election, I think it's really important that following like January, February, March, we do a team building with new people.
These will always be open meetings, though. I like the idea of anybody who's interested in being a board member could sit in and take part in it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But especially if, I don't know, you might want to incorporate that a little bit into it. I don't know, just thinking.
Are you talking about for the handbook, this one, or which, are you just talking about? Any
Yeah, especially
board
like looking at the governance handbook and
Yeah.
for the governing districts, or what are they called? I forgot what they call them.
Trustee
Trustee
areas,
areas,
yeah.
yeah. Not very, yeah. Like if we had it in June, we might have some people that are interested and they can observe or watch, see the process.
That actually might be pretty good.
Yeah. Gets their minds thinking a little more globally.
Yeah.
I feel like June is, you're thinking June because school's out?
Well,
You have more bandwidth in June?
I don't know about one bandwidth. I just know May is crazy time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
April can be kind of a crazy time too. We have the budget testing. You know.
So would it be realistic, like, so specific to just this year, school ends on a Thursday, if we do that Friday, Saturday?
Look at that.
So then hopefully, because then we then have one more meeting after that then we could, right, so we'd have like the conversation about the governance handbook and then we could approve it at that last meeting in June. And then it would be like ready to go for all the new people who are interested in running.
It'll be ready in July.
But if I remember what it's, I don't know, if we wanted it 2 times a year, is that what we were talking?
No, not necessarily.
Well, not the big, but I think just that reminder of like we want to have, right, like if there's new people coming on, you don't want your first governance development to be like in August.
Right.
But like,
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. So if we did it January, or I'm sorry, June 10th and 11th or something like that, the board meeting is the 16th. There wouldn't be time to approve it on the 16th.
oh, yeah, you're right.
But
So-
maybe that doesn't matter.
why don't we do, for this year, why don't we do it on the oh, so wait, that's the following year. Oh my gosh. So, I mean, where is this year's board?
What's your question?
So I think,
Where's the
if you look
20, 21,
under,
22?
if you look at one of the attachments,
It's the 22, 23.
oh, it doesn't start till the,
Well, we can come up with the concept and then the
So-
president and vice president can like figure it out with me.
Yeah.
We don't have to.
But for this
but
year,
something
I
if you
guess,
could go with a Friday, Saturday,
yeah, and maybe we
and maybe
could.
even look at spring dates, maybe you just
Mhm.
look at a few different dates and bring it to the board.
Mhm.
Does that sound good to everyone?
March or something.
The like,
And I think we'd want to use Sapita, so it'd be based on her availability too.
yeah,
Mhm.
So maybe we can come up with a couple options and hold the
Okay.
board and.
yeah, does that sound good to everyone for that longer retreat,
Yeah,
for the governance handbook?
like I said, I kind of like the idea of making it standard. If we're gonna do this, then commit to it annually in calendar.
Yeah.
I think even with the new direction of elections, that might be actually helpful standard to keep to as well.
Mhm.
What might be a helpful standard? I didn't follow that part.
Just to make sure that we have that evaluation or that time to reflect on governance handbook, or the governance team, workshop. I don't even know what to call it. I was just saying, just having that time devoted in there
Yeah,
would be valuable, and just having it, calendared every year, just being part of the process. Almost
Yeah.
like as clockwork as when we developed the
yeah,
calendar.
or like we all know AAC is at this time, like,
Right.
Yeah.
we all know our board retreats at this time, and we'll have one or two other like evening developments or whatever.
So the other thing I wanted to suggest, and I'm just throwing this out there, and it's really up to the board, is to look at the start times. So a concept that I heard, again, this is from another superintendent, and we don't have to do it exactly the same way. She said that they start every meeting at 6:00 with an hour closed session. And they rarely need an hour for closed session, but they bring in dinner, so people don't have to worry about like, where am I gonna get my food from? And when there's a closed session, it occurs before the agenda starts. And that works well for them. I was thinking for us, like some version of that, like it doesn't have to be 6, it could be 6:30, that's flexible. It could be 7, although that might defeat the purpose. We also might do something where if we have an earlier start time, we do either a closed session or a study session where we do one of those deep dives. And I'm just reflecting on that because it seems like the last couple of meetings when we've had the hour starting at 6, when we looked at the trustee area maps, it felt like people were sharp and wasn't rushed, and we had pretty good discussions. The hard part is getting there by 6. So just kind of throwing that out there. I mean, I think the part that I like is that we didn't feel rushed and it was time to really dive deeply into something, and we weren't worried about the rest of the agenda. So I'm just throwing that out there for
Because you
discussion.
knew you had an hour for that one.
Yeah.
It's not like you're gonna have to finish this and then get through all the other ones. It's just set aside.
That's something to think about. And I guess I'll say one more thing while you're thinking about that. I remember last year when Bridget did that survey of how long our meetings were, and we found out like, well, they're longer than they used to be, but they're pretty normal. And that was COVID times. It's just that we start late. So that's something for your consideration too, the start times and how we structure it.
Yeah. Well, it makes me think about, I think it was last January when we met with Greg, Janice, because it's some other time, I don't remember. And he was talking about how they do like, before COVID, they did those discussion meetings, right? So I think they're like, they started at 6, they started at 5 and had those, discussions where they're just discussing a topic. So it's not the same as a study session, but I know we talked about that idea before as well. So yeah, thoughts? Does 6
It's
o'clock?
hard, I know.
6 o'clock works for me, but I know that it might not work for you, so,
I'll do what I can, it's fine.
I wonder if we could do, like, could we do like one,
We can do
one of
whatever
the
we want,
month?
we get to decide
You
it.
know,
6 o'clock sounds reasonable.
Well,
I
and
don't think
I
it's once a month, I think you have to go all in.
do all of
Well,
them,
no, not really. You could make it a special board meeting once a month.
because the regular meeting would always still start at 7, it would just be
I think if we do this, we should probably just go all in.
do all the meetings.
Yeah, it's just, it'd be easier that way, instead of trying to figure out which one.
Oh, which week are you 6,
I
if we
think that
do
would throw the
7?
community off
Oh, I
a little
see.
bit too, and I think it'd just be easier to be consistent.
Yeah. Yeah.
she can hear it. Look at.
Oh, yeah, it is harder, because we're like trying to talk to each other more on this one. One thing I was thinking about, because Mike had mentioned this, this week, and so I was thinking about, well, so like he said, they had done dinner, and so for me personally, doing the 6 o'clock with a dinner for sure makes it easier, like if I have to try to get myself dinner before 6 o'clock, that is true, so I think having dinner with that makes the 6 o'clock way more manageable for me. And I was like, so I had a little bit more time kind of thinking about this, right? But I was thinking about, he had mentioned, that closed session thing, but then also the study sessions. And like, so like maybe like once, so we always would start at 6 maybe, but like maybe the first one is the first meeting of the month, the 6 to 7 is like a study session or a discussion session, right? So either we're diving into something where we're getting presentation, or maybe it's just we just want to reflect on equity, discussion, whatever. And then maybe the second one, we do the closed session early, because I like that idea, because you said like usually they like don't take the whole time, so then it gives them time, like that casual connecting time that I think helps bring us together. And so I liked that idea, right? I was like, oh, that is nice. It builds in some of that connecting time that we have not been able to have. I mean, we've had it now in the last couple of months, but we haven't had it for so long. So
half an hour closed session with dinner.
yeah, so depending, sometimes our closed sessions are longer, right? So the closed session might end up going most of that hour, or the closed session might be done after 20 or 30 minutes. And so then that gives us 20 or 30 minutes to just connect and talk, and the stuff that sometimes we, just afterwards we're, hey, how are you? How are your kids? Right? Like.
And I think now that everything is recorded and it's on camera, it's harder to have like a personal, like I'm more reluctant to say like, what I'm doing, later, I mean, like you just don't talk about your family as much on camera, honestly, so.
Okay, so sounds like.
I'm okay with it, and it sounds like, when were we thinking of starting? When would we
It would
switch?
start, I suppose, like in January. Is January when our new calendar starts?
No, it starts in August for the.
But we could adjust it, we could adjust our current calendar.
You can adjust it.
Yeah,
Oh, that's true.
so is everyone good? So I think you would want to check in with Nancy,
Right.
So
to
we
make sure
only
she's
need
okay.
a closed session once a month. I thought that it was, so far we've been.
The alternate ones we can have closed session after the meeting,
Like we normally
that we
do.
normally do.
And it can be
Okay, so-
adjusted, right? Like maybe there's one
Now we're
time,
making it longer. Because we're starting early but not shortening the agenda.
but I think this will, like what Mike was saying earlier, when there's more of that time for discussion, then when we get to the business stuff, we will probably be able to move through the business stuff quicker.
So sometimes it wouldn't be a closed session, it would be like a discussion, a special topic. And that would be open to everybody, but we would start earlier and have that.
Yeah, my doubt is, as we say, like, then how do you put that sometimes in the public agenda, like, well, we're having a closed session, so they don't really need to log in at 6, but then maybe next time we want, and then we're gonna talk about something important at 6, and who knows what happened next month.
We'd have to be clear about that.
But I think like most cities, this is a pretty normal, like in the public sector, and study sessions usually have less public at them, like that's just the nature of them. mean, so they're always welcome, but like most cities, like that's how they're set up, right? They'll like have their closed session earlier, they'll have their study session, and then they have their regular meeting. So this is actually a fairly, like, in the public sector, this is a fairly normal process. And the regular meetings, right, the regular meetings are still starting at 7 o'clock, right? Like, that's not changing.
So in the 6 o'clock discussion, nothing would be decided, right? Because it's a discussion session.
Let's think about it a little bit more. If you have thoughts that come to you, like that was a really good one, Isabel, like we need to be clear to the public. Send them to me. We could enact this kind of whenever we want, right? I mean, we have a calendar through June 30th. That's right, Jesus. And so we could start it in August, or we could start it right away. We don't have to start it right away.
Well, and I mean, honestly, like I would like to start having those deeper discussions. So I'm interested in extending our time, and
So maybe that's just have some special meetings.
Yeah, and I'm interested in that, and you know, we can bring in food for a special meeting if it's just discussion.
So maybe that's the way to start, is with some special meetings starting at 6 o'clock. Not every time.
And see how it goes.
To see how it goes. Okay.
I didn't quite catch that. What's?
So our regular meetings now start at 7.
Right.
So what we could do this spring is have some of the meetings, a special, like we've been doing for the CVRA stuff, a special meeting at 6 where it's an in-depth dive. And then the regular meeting starts at 7. So that's essentially, it's not exactly the same as what we're talking about.
Wait, I thought that is the same what we're talking about.
Well, no, but Jeff said that like we should just call it the regular meeting starting.
I don't think that's what he meant. I think he just meant we should always have the same 6 o'clock start time.
Whatever the start time is, you know, you were saying whether it's closed session that starts at 6, where the actual meeting starts at 7. I think that should be the standard.
Okay.
You know, that every meeting, we're here at 6 doing something, and then the meeting starts at 7. That way it's just consistent. And I think it helps our scheduling. I think it helps the community understand what's going on a little better. I think we should just follow in that routine.
Yeah.
Just start.
So it's essentially always something special at the earlier one, and the regular always starts at 7.
Okay.
Or a closed session.
But that's still, I'm calling that special.
Anytime we start like adjusting times, and sometimes we have it early, it's just gonna be
confusing.
It's gonna be confusing for some people, and it's gonna be, you know, brought up on convenient arguments, you know?
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Any other, so kind of discussion about time and schedule and getting some of those things intentionally into our schedule. And then it sounds like our long retreat meeting will be the governance handbook. And then were you guys on board also with the priority of those areas to focus on, the priority being the setting direction area? Or is there another area that you guys feel like it's really important for us to dive into the beginning of next year? Setting direction sounds good to you, Jeff?
Sure.
Okay, Isabel?
Setting directions.
It's what we were talking about at the beginning.
To me, Isabel, it's kind of the same thing. So like I was saying, like we could take those deep dive meetings to focus on our areas of focus. That's kind of the same as setting direction. In my mind, but that's just me.
A little bit, but like when you look at these ones, I feel like these are a little bit different than that though.
Well,
right? The board adopts long-range priorities. The board uses district mission to drive district performance. The board adopts this, and that third one is the one that
but we should have.
The board adopts clear and measurable indicators.
But we should have clear and measurable indicators on our priorities. That's why we should focus on it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So like to me, like, that's a.
So we could go through some.
But that's gonna take some work.
Yeah.
To learn how to do that,
Yeah.
Okay.
So Isabel, does that, like, do you feel like that's the area for these areas for governance, not study sessions of the district focus areas? I'm talking about for the board, right, governance stuff of our personal areas. Setting direction will be kind of the focus
And I feel like if we're going through the handbook, some of these other things like agreements and other things will be covered in the handbook and we'll be going through that anyway, right?
Yeah,
So,
they'll get covered in that area.
mhm.
Okay. Okay, I think this was good. Do you feel like you have good information?
So we'll be working on this.
Yeah, well, if
Together.
you're saying yes, it's more, I mean, like, the three of us, but then
Yeah.
we'll be handing over to Bridget. Okay. Thank you, everybody. We are now on to G, discussion on California School Boards Association Delegate Assembly. If there's any members of the public who wish to speak on this item, please use the raise hand feature now. Not seeing any? Okay, my name is Zara, but I think we're actually gonna turn over to Mike.
Just want to make just a point of order, is this, did we already do we did the calendar within the discussion?
We weren't approving the calendar, it was just there for reference.
Okay, I just wanted to
And
make,
this is, we're all reviewing discussion items, so I
okay.
think we're good.
I don't think we just actually looked at the calendar and like that, so I want to know if anybody had discussion about
Oh, yeah,
We
yeah,
talked
if
about
anyone
time
wants
a
to,
lot.
yeah, if
Yeah,
anyone wants to
but-
talk about it, and we're not, when do we approve that,
So
Jesus?
that'll be in December.
Okay,
But this one, I put it in two sections, because one, we were talking about coloring for the deep dive stuff, but I also added it to H, which is part of the organizational meeting.
yes,
So that's
okay.
under both.
Okay, thank you for making note of it, and I would say maybe all of us, if we haven't, like, look at it based on our calendars, if there are any concerns about specific dates, get that to Mike before the next meeting. Does that sound good? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. Okay, so for this item, I'm actually gonna hand it over to Mike.
Okay, so this is an item to find out if there's any members of the board who are interested in being considered for delegate assembly. Bridget is automatically on it because she's vice president going to be president.
No,
No, this is not
That's
that.
something else.
This is delegate assembly where she,
I got it, you renominated me last
Oh, you're a
year
two-year
and then I
thing.
got elected.
yes, it's what Reed
So it's a
used to do all the
two-year.
time.
Mhm.
Okay.
It's a 2-year gig.
Okay, so you've already got a year coming.
This is, yeah, so I've got 2 years.
It's like one more year.
Right. Well, I gotta look, it seems like it's, so I was elected.
I mean, you haven't finished this year, but then one more year
Spring
next
and
year.
fall, spring and fall.
Yeah.
Okay, so I did talk to Nancy this afternoon. She said she would like to be considered for it. She said even if she doesn't win, she thinks it's really important for her to put out an agenda around early child care and early childhood education, which she thinks is, I'm just kind of speaking for her, telling you what she said.
Yeah.
2 items that are really important to her and she thinks may be sort of missing from delegate assembly, so she'd like those to be highlighted. So she's very interested. And so I think that just means that we put it on the next agenda. Is that
Yeah,
right?
so we'll put it on the agenda to nominate, we just have to nominate her so then she can apply to be one of the people.
And what are the positions that are open for the delegate assembly?
So delegate assembly is part of, we're in Region 20 and they have, I think they have a certain number, like about 10 delegates that are up on alternating schedules, and then they have one that's not usually nominated. And so people roll on and off depending on their service. And it's a lot of, the people who are typically on delegate assembly are people who are active in the Santa Clara County School Boards Association. And so they, most people who are on it volunteer for committees or, are connected in other ways, like working with other school board members. And then that's how everybody knows them and say, yeah, please vote for this person, right? Because they work really hard on this issue, they're knowledgeable, they're whatever. And so, but people, sometimes there'll be an appointment because somebody resigns or moves away, they're no longer a trustee, and then that seat is open and then they'll appoint somebody. And then, but this is just the regular election schedule. And so they try to, when they look at it, when they do the appointments, they have an opportunity to look at it and say, look at representation geographically, interests, kind of just demographics overall. But when they're up for election, that's up to every school board to vote. Like we did last year, we voted for, however many people were up. So
Yeah, and I remember
thank you for voting for me last
it was
time.
all the way to January, isn't it? It's not.
Yeah, because there was a tie. Oh, yeah, so
So she'll apply in January and then we vote and it's by March, they know the delegates. And when you said positions, it's confusing because you have the Santa Clara County School Board Association, right? And there are positions there, right? There's president, Bridget's vice president,
That's right.
right? There's those, yeah, so there's that. And then we, on our next item, we are gonna talk about who is represented for that. That is different than delegate assembly, where it's just school board members from all over the state come together twice a year to talk about the things that are important for school boards.
So CSBA that runs the conference we're going to, they are, we're delegates for them. So we vote on their governing board issues, we look at their policies and whatever, and we, and that's
Decide the priorities of CSBA.
Yeah, but Reed was mentioning before that it seems like it's, is it a rubber stamping issue or do they give feedback? And when I was in the spring meeting, it was a lot of feedback, and because it was, they had breakout sessions, they had people from CSBA in every room, and they really took probably more feedback than before from the delegates. So we'll see. So I'm going to the first in-person meeting. It's usually the day before AEC.
So she's going down a day early to do the delegate assembly stuff. Okay, so we're good. So so then we'll nominate Nancy so that she can that's just for her to be able to apply. Okay. Everyone good if we go to the next item? Okay, we are on to H, discussion on the annual organization meeting of the Board of Education. And so then for this one, we kind of want to do two pieces. So one, just kind of check in. We I think last year kind of had talked about the routine we want to do. So we'll just do a quick check-in of the positions to see if everyone kind of likes that, the ones that are right here. And then in packet review, Bridget and I were talking about, there are a few other kind of groups that maybe are not going to be official ones like this that have to have a vote, but maybe we just as a board want to. So we want to we'll take a couple minutes to brainstorm a few of those organizations that we think, or meetings that we think, hey, we'd love to have a board representative at, and just briefly.
Like DLAC.
Yeah, and just briefly talk about that. Okay, so first we'll go through, so I remember at the end of last year, we had just talked about, we can always adjust it at times, right? But it sounded like the cycle, it sounded like you want to be clerk, Isabel, yes, this next year.
Yeah.
So if I remember, so if you want to be clerk, and then Nancy would move from clerk to vice president, and Bridget would move from vice president to president. Is everyone, Nancy's not here, we can check with her, but is everyone here good with that?
Yeah.
Did you have something else?
No, yeah, that's good. Yeah, I will be more involved, unless Nancy doesn't want to do vice president, but otherwise. I'll work with her.
Yeah.
She does.
Okay, and then representative to the Santa Clara County School Boards Association, Bridget, because she's on,
That's the one.
yeah, that's what it is,
That's what I
yeah.
was
So
trying to
Bridget, because she is one of the officers, I want to get that word, she needs to be that person. I'm assuming Nancy would love to stay there alternative, so unless somebody else feels strongly that they want to be the alternative for it. Are we good?
It's good. Yeah, that's the SB.
And anyone can go to the meetings,
It's the person to vote.
But honestly, because I'm gonna be because I'm the vice president this year, I had to be the voting member this year. And, Nancy still goes to all the meetings. You could still go to all the meetings.
Yeah, it's just the voting person. Then representative to the Santa Clara County Committee on School District Organization. It's a really, really hard job.
sometimes.
What's the
Is that
difference
sometimes?
between the two of them?
Not yet. It could
Oh, they could be, but you're not actually on the reorganization, isn't it just
be.
you?
We could be pulled onto it.
So the difference is the first one, the representative to the Santa Clara County School Boards Association, that's Santa Clara CSBA. That is somebody where that's where you vote on things that like that organization wants to do, right? And so that's our School Boards Association, whereas what's the Committee on School District Organization?
I mean, we had an issue a little while ago with community who wanted to join another district, and I remember I was feeling a little stressed out by that because they were having this committee that was formed to hear that, and I wasn't getting no communication as part of that, representative. So I think they just pull certain people to be the hearing body. That's what I learned in this process. Because I remember thinking, am I missing emails? Am I missing mail? And
I thought what it was that it's a vote thing and you're the one who just turns in our form.
no, there is a body of representatives for the school district reorganization, and they do vote, right? And there's every year there's an election on that too, and you do vote for them.
Yeah.
Almost like for delegate assembly.
Yeah.
Only it's not as impactful as delegate assembly. You don't have to do a whole motion. It's just basically me getting a ballot and deciding and telling the board this is what I voted for.
Yeah.
But I started realizing over the last couple of years it's a little more involved. It can be, right? And what it is, it can be very contentious as well, because like I said, there's some things used for taboo for board, right? Redistricting and closing schools. So you're involved in one of those situations, especially if you have a whole community that's trying to, in effect, secede from another one, right? Or get incorporated by another district. There's a lot of emotion, a lot of politics go behind that. Or if the school district's trying to unify, which would actually eliminate the school district.
Yeah.
So it can be.
Yeah.
Have to happen.
Are you good doing
19 years, but I mean, whatever.
Are you good doing it one more year?
Sure.
Unless someone else wants it?
You didn't talk Isabel into it.
I know. It sounds sexy now, but yeah.
Watch your last chill year and it becomes a crazy job. I can support you if needed. Okay, and then the liaison to the district's wellness committee, who is Nancy the one who's currently doing that?
I'm doing it.
You're currently doing that? Okay.
I think I'm doing it.
Would you like to continue to do that? Okay, and who was the alternate? Was Nancy the alternate? Is that what I was thinking?
I don't know.
I think that's what it was.
Okay.
I don't know.
So do you guys want to, Jesus, will you check in with Nancy to see if she still wants to be the alternate for that? And right, since she wasn't here, she might at our next meeting want to talk about stuff and change stuff, right? But this is just the
I didn't
ideas.
know because there was one meeting that I couldn't make and I told them with time, but I didn't know to call Nancy to see if she could make it.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the last one is the liaison to the district facility and finance committee. And that's Isabel and I right now.
Yeah.
If somebody is wanting it, I'm happy to step down. I'm also happy to continue on it. It's interesting.
That's 2 people, right?
Yeah, 2 people are on that. So is anyone wanting it other than Isabel and I? So we'll keep with Isabel and myself. Okay. Okay.
That's good.
Sounds good. Okay. So then let's just take
But here's the thing though, is it as we go down, if we add more things and you'd rather do something else, then that's okay.
Yeah. And I think probably through the year too, we can check in, right? So it's well, I've got too many things on my plate, right? We always can check in and adjust. Okay. So while we kind of brainstorm a short little list, Jesus is gonna type it in for us. So I think DLAC would be one of the, right? So the ones we just did are the official ones that we need to do, right? That are official positions. and these would be kind of more unofficial, but we all are aware, like, hey, this is something that we think having a board representative at would be great,
I
right?
would like to go into be like, you're gonna make it a committee.
Yeah, and it's really hard to find out when those meetings are, honestly. Like, I've wanted to go to them and like, I seem to find out really late. And I don't know, cause I can't find it on the calendar, and so, like, I would like to go to those meetings as well, but, like, I've made it to a couple of ELAC meetings because it's at the site level and I could find it on somebody's calendar. But if it's a DLAC meeting, like, maybe, like, anybody can go, right? It's not gonna be a board thing. I think it's great, other school districts make sure that somebody from the board is at every DLAC district level meeting. And so I think it'd be great, especially if we're focusing on English learners and family engagement and other things. I think it fits right in for us to say, we want to definitely make sure someone's there.
Yeah.
So
are there any other, like, organizations or like meetings?
You can put me on there too for DLAC. We can take turns if one of us can't go, or I think challenge team, right?
Oh yeah, challenge team, yeah.
I think going to those are very good.
How did you find out about them? I've been asking for a couple years for the meeting schedule.
Me.
And then when we went there, I made sure.
And you have to keep asking them to put you
Yeah, you have to get put on
multiple times.
Ask
They're really nice.
Ask Jesus and me, and we'll work on it for you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think the idea is
I think
that
Bree
there's
tried to get me on one time and it never happened.
No, yeah.
And then actually I haven't thought about it for a little while.
it's good to have a designated person, and if that person can't make it, then.
Yeah.
I've been going to the Saturday meeting, shall you go
the foundation
the
meeting?
foundation?
So those education foundation meeting, they have to appoint you. So, I think that's a really great group of people, and, I think, so, I don't know, we don't need to say who that is, but,
Well, I
or we
think,
can.
I think it makes sense if the board, depending on what your role is on that, right? So if you're the board's representative, whether they appoint you or not,
Yeah,
the board should
okay,
acknowledge that.
Yeah.
I don't think they're gonna, no one's gonna have a.
I think it's a 2-year term.
Okay.
That we talked about last year, so, so I'm the person, and then Isabel goes all the time, she could be the alternate, or someone else could be the alternate, or.
Well, I don't think we need necessarily have an official alternate.
Okay, so SEF is.
Her challenge
Okay.
team they're scheduled this year. I really liked it when it was early and it was like before everything.
Yeah, it's kind of right.
It's like the crack of dawn, and now they're like, 10 a.m. This week it's 10:30. Oh, we started 20 minutes early. Like, what is going on, It's like really hard for me, so I wouldn't be
I
able
would say
to
that
take
sounds
it.
better to me, because 7 o'clock I'm trying to like kids ready for
Okay,
school.
so it looks like Bridget is on SEF, so we can put
Yeah.
that in.
Yeah.
And then for challenge team, do we have a volunteer?
Well, Isabel goes there.
Isabel.
But Isabel, you're on everything. It's just
But,
like,
but she can check in later, right? If she's going to all of them now anyways,
Yeah.
then it can always be a check-in later, like, hey, this is too much. Yeah. And I think a piece, I'll probably just go occasionally. I just want to be on the list, because I know like they have topics and they're just like good resources, so I just mainly want to be on the email list, and I'll probably
It would just kind of be,
hop on
it
occasionally.
would be not great if none of us went.
Yeah,
Like we all couldn't make it, we all were students.
like having somebody from the
So the
district.
lead, like I would say your job, Isabel, is if you can go, you go. If you can't, check to see that someone else can.
Yeah,
like Michelle.
yeah.
Yeah.
So Michelle's the alternate.
And then I think it would be, which we kind of do this, but I think being a little bit more intentional of, like when we've gone to one of these, like not a long, but just a very short, which I think we do it occasionally, but just being intentional, like giving a brief update, like also with like the board office hours, right? Whoever does the board office hours, in your comments, just a very brief summary of, oh, I went to challenge team, they talked about this, it was really interesting, or, you know, like, we got connected to so-and-so, just a quick, which I think again, like we normally mostly do, but I think kind of just being more intentional, that way we all have generally the information, right? Or maybe you like say something like, oh, that sounds really interesting, then I can check in with you, or like, you know, she went to the Wednesday night meeting, like, oh, I want to know more about that, I could like check in with her about it, or whatever. Okay, anything else you want to add?
So I know that it's like when we get closer to, when we have open houses in person again, I think it'd be really, like, it always seems like we're kind of scrambling to like make sure that somebody gets to every school. I think it'd be really nice if like when that happens, when that gets closer, we could have a conversation, you know, about like, you know, making sure that people feel like they were visited. Like, I don't know how like the superintendent gets to every single one, like, you know, it was
Well,
like a
cabinet
sprint,
has
right?
traditionally split it up.
Cabinet makes sure everyone.
Yeah, I mean, no, but I mean, it's like a sprint, right? Because they have them on the same night. So I remember like Ben would go to like 3 and he was like, okay, now we're going to Lakewood and now we're going over here. And I was like, so, but I think it would just be nice if we could.
Well, the Jesus person, who currently is named Jesus, organizes that, like creates a chart and, you know, checks in.
When that gets closer.
When it gets closer, yeah. But it's been hard with them all virtual.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And that sort of piece. Okay, anything else? Are we good with this?
There are some other things that we go to that are not on here, and like one that Isabel and I have been going to is the Sunnyvale Unhoused Collaborative. And you know, it's a little bit of a wing thing because it's but it mostly has to do with like how things are going in the shelter and what's happening with the people living in the campers, and just kind of like what the latest thing is on housing. Like they're developing that one over on the Crestview Hotel, and they started that experiment, and then it was real interesting last week because they were talking about lessons learned, and like I guess that they were renting it or they took it over from Crestview, but the people who were there like damaged some property, and so they were talking about all the supports that they need to put in place. But anyway, it's a window into like the experiences of what unhoused, and there's unhoused children. They talk about kids living in the camping parks, right? So it's not something that the board would have to do, but it does relate. So I don't know.
A lot of that had to do with the one that we had in the shelter that we had in Sunnyvale, and we had kids there.
So do you guys feel like that's an important one that we should always have a board representative at, or is that more one of those like the board member has an interest in something like that, they just do that and they can maybe let us know about it?
Well, like for example, we're talking about if we should put some resources in the afternoon for the kids that are there, because apparently sadly, we've been constantly having some kids there since the pandemic started and even now. So like, how can we help those kids who are in the shelter?
So you guys want, I mean, we need to not have a discussion about that, because we're gonna have topics, so like, do we want that as one of our?
I mean, that's how we get connected to it, like how it's interesting.
So if you guys wanna have it on, I'm fine with having it on.
I think we should just put it on there for this year, because we're going.
Do you wanna tell the name again?
It's called the Sunnyvale Unhoused Collaborative.
Okay.
And
Bridget,
the other issue that comes up with them is, you know, the cities wanna take back unused school property. So like if we had surplus property for any reason, the cities are the ones who give permits for other uses, including renting to.
So that's a good one to have someone on.
So it's probably a good one to have something on, because they always talk about, well, you know, we can use surplus school property to develop housing, and we can do that by not giving them permits and stuff. I mean, it's like creative, but awful.
Okay, you said, was there another one that you wanted to put on there?
That's the only one that I.
Okay.
think of, yeah.
Okay, so are we good? This?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, fantastic. I think we are now to, it's also going down, we're gonna be closed session. So if there is any member of the public who wishes to speak on any of the closed session, actually before we do that, sorry, informational items. So I'll make note, do I need to, I don't need to read them all off, do I?
No.
We just have a whole slew of informational items, A through F, that are administrative regulations related to, the stuff previous in the agenda. And now we're on to item 11, public comments on closed session items. So if there's any member of the public who wishes to speak on any closed session item, please use the raise hand feature now. All right, not seeing any, we will convene to closed session. And when we're done, we will come report out and close up our meeting.
Thank you, Monica. Thank you, Margola. Have a good night.
Thank you.
You're good. All right. I'm not sure.
the back door?
Oh, we're gonna hurt something.
You know, crazy enough already.
He's not.
After like a half hour, 45 minutes, you'd be like, okay. I'm reconvening to open session at 10:06. In closed session, we discussed conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, no action was taken. And then our last item is 14, future meetings and adjournment. Is there any future topics anyone wants to bring up?
Yes, do we want to have a 6 o'clock special meeting on December 9th to have more discussion about the trustee areas?
For the trustee area, having it at 6
Yes.
instead of,
Yes.
that works for me. Does that work for everybody?
That's the new maps.
The new maps.
Yeah, let's do that. That sounds good.
Okay.
And then did we get the go ahead that we'll approve it at the January meeting? We won't approve it at the December one?
Well, that, you guys have to decide that.
And then
But we check with William.
that would be the.
Oh, yes, we can. Remember I said that to you.
So we could move it to
We can.
January.
We can.
Okay, I have one more idea. That.
Yes, hold on one second.
So the first meeting in January is a governance meeting? Is that where you wanna approve it at?
Yeah, it's a regular meeting, isn't it?
No, it's a regular meeting, but it's a governance type meeting, it's not your regular.
That's true, so doing it because that's like one of those meetings where we're like sitting around the table.
I don't know. That's up to you guys.
Is there a reason we couldn't do it?
Well, it just,
You can.
it changed it, right, but just a different type of meeting,
It'd be the only real business
yeah.
item.
How long would we think that would take?
What if we did can we approve it at a special meeting, such as we approved at a regular meeting? That's we approved a regular meeting.
Don't. Yeah, it has to be regular.
Yeah. I was thinking we'd do a special meeting before it, but we'd have to do it during the regular meeting.
So it would just be the second meeting in January? Instead of the
Is
first?
there something wrong with that, or?
If
Well, we're
I think
stretching
second-
the timeline.
Mhm.
The attorney said it's okay to stretch the timeline because you're getting extra information. So he probably would say it's okay again, but we're really stretching it.
So can we switch?
I would
can we
suggest
switch-
switching it to the second January one. I feel okay about it.
Okay.
Oh, I was just gonna say, could we switch and have one be the governance and one, switch the two meetings?
We decided to do the governance one, the first one in January, because it's tricky to, for staff to have all of their
Okay.
stuff.
Yeah, okay.
I say plan A, is we switch it to the second,
Okay.
unless the attorney says no,
Yeah,
and
that
then we,
sounds good.
then we flip flop the meetings.
Okay.
That would be plan B.
Well, but flip-flopping the meetings
They're not ready.
for staff
Oh,
to try to have stuff ready at the holiday time.
Or we could have a 6 o'clock meeting on that day.
no,
But you-
we're
not
trying
to
flip
approve
flop
it.
in the January meetings.
I know, she's saying that.
Yeah, so the reason we put the governance as the first one in January
Right.
is because for staff to have all of their items ready to go at that first January meeting in the end of December is a tricky time.
Oh, I see.
Could
Well,
we
then,
just move a governance to February? I mean,
I think the second one is probably fine.
we'll see.
So
It's
we're
fine.
all good with that, right?
We can
Unless the
find
lawyers.
something
Well, that's fine.
Okay.
I'll ask William. I'm
Yeah.
sure he'll say it's fine.
Because we're really just taking time.
And I think that would actually be better. It gives more time for stuff to get figured out.
I got you.
Okay, so the December 9th meeting, we will do a 6 o'clock special meeting for the trustee areas. And then we tentatively will do the approval for the trustee areas at our second meeting in January.
yeah, that sounds good.
Just January 20th. Okay.
And then the
Okay.
other idea for another, I don't know if we need to have it as another discussion, but it seems like when we're having these meetings and they're on this long dais like this, if we wanna talk, the purpose of the board meetings is to have a meeting of the board, is there a way to have, or would it mess things up for us to have another way to configure ourselves.
So I would say, I don't think we need to have a meeting. I think, why don't the three of us, as we're talking about stuff,
Mhm.
like at our next packet review, talk about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Does that work? Okay.
yeah, that works for me.
Okay, anything else?
That's a great day to talk about it. Okay.
Okay, with that, I adjourn our meeting at